Hello, friends. Welcome to the Sleep Aliens. Did you know that nearly 80% of those who watch my videos aren't subscribed? If you enjoy the content, I'd truly appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button. It helps a lot. Also, don't forget to leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments. By the way, where are you watching from? Let me know in the comments. I work as a contract pilot for the Fairbanks-based National Weather Service. Most of my work is concentrated between October and March, when there's a need for supplies at the North Pole research stations, and when scientists on the North Slope need to observe ice conditions that cannot be measured from the ground. I have been flying regularly to Barrow, known as Utqiagvik, for nearly 8 years. I know the most important landmarks in this region by heart. The bend in the Colville River, which I liken to a mirror. The old DBU line station, visible as a dark spot on the snow. The pressure ridges lining the coastline like broken teeth. I thought I knew the sky there as well as I know the street in front of my own house. I was wrong. My name is Grant McCarthy. I'm 41 years old. I grew up in Anchorage, learned to fly in my 20s, and flew small planes enough in winter to remember that the North Pole doesn't care about your experience or confidence. It just waits. My co-pilot on the route I'm about to describe was Renee Voss. She was 10 years younger than me, very smart, and had spent 3 seasons flying cargo to villages before we teamed up. She wasn't easily scared. That mattered to them. It was early February. We were scheduled for a standard supply drop to the atmospheric research station just east of Barrow. 2 pallets of equipment, some sensor arrays that needed installation before the next storm cycle, and a passenger, a graduate student heading up to collect data for his thesis. The weather forecast was marginal but pliable. Winds at 15 knots, visibility 5 miles in light snow, ceiling at 1,200 feet. Cold but stable. We'd flown worse. We departed Fairbanks at 6:47 in the morning. The sky was still dark. That time of year you get maybe 4 hours of weak daylight around solar noon, and the rest is a long gradient between black and blue. We climbed to 8,500 feet and settled into the cruise. Our plane was a Twin Otter, reliable and built for rough conditions. Renee handled the radio checks while I trimmed for the wind. The grad student sat in the back with his headset on, reading a paperback under a dome light. 2 hours into the flight, we crossed the Brooks Range. The peaks below us were smooth domes of white with ridge lines that cut sharp shadows even in the dim light. Renee checked the fuel. We were on schedule. The heater worked. The engines sounded clean. It was the kind of flight where you let your mind go quiet and just watch the instruments and the horizon. Then the aurora started. I've seen the northern lights more times than I can count. They're part of the job when you fly at night up here. Green curtains, sometimes red or purple, rippling across the sky like silk in a breeze. Beautiful, yes, but also predictable. They follow magnetic lines. They pulse. They move. What showed up ahead of us didn't move like that. It started as a band of pale green stretching east to west across our nose. Normal enough. But then the band stopped rippling. It went rigid. The whole structure locked in place like someone had hit pause on a video. And inside that frozen band, a white line appeared. Not a streak. Not a tail, a line. Perfectly straight. Horizontal. Thin as a pencil mark, but bright enough to make me squint. It sat motionless inside the aurora, about 10 degrees above the horizon. "You seeing that?" Renee asked. "I see it," I said. I checked the GPS. We were 127 miles north-northwest of the Colville. The line sat roughly on our heading. I thought maybe it was a reflection off the windscreen, so I shifted in my seat. The line didn't move with me. I glanced at the side window. It was there too, same angle, same brightness. Renee leaned forward and pointed. "What is that, a contrail?" At that altitude? I said. And frozen in place? Contrails don't sit still. They drift and spread. This thing looked like someone had drawn it on the sky with a ruler and a piece of chalk. I kept my hand on the yoke and my eyes forward. The autopilot was engaged, but I wanted to be ready. The grad student noticed. He pressed his face to the window and pulled his headset mic close. Is that part of the aurora? We're not sure, Renee said. The line didn't fade. It didn't move. It just hung there while we closed the distance. After a few minutes, I noticed something else. The radio had gone quiet. No static, no carrier wave hum, just silence. I keyed the mic. Fairbanks Radio, Twin Otter, November 7, 2 Tango. Foxtrot, radio check. Nothing. I tried again, same result. Renee reached over and cycled the primary radio. The display blinked, came back on, and showed normal FREC settings. She keyed her mic. Barrow Tower, Twin Otter, November 7, 2 Tango, Foxtrot. How do you read? Silence. I checked the backup radio. Dead air on that one, too. Not static, not interference. Just an empty channel. That put a knot in my stomach. In 8 years of flying this route, I'd never lost all radio contact at once. Equipment fails. Frequencies get crowded. But both radios going silent in clear air? That doesn't happen. We still have nav? I asked. Renee tapped the GPS screen. It flickered. The position jumped south, then snapped back north, then froze. The altitude reading cycled from 8,500 feet to 14,200 feet to 2,100 feet in the span of 3 seconds. None of those numbers were real. I glanced at the altimeter. It showed 8,450 feet. Steady. The attitude indicator was level. Airspeed steady at 135 knots. Everything analog was fine. Everything digital was dying. The white line ahead of us began to rotate, slowly at first, like the hand of a clock. It tilted from horizontal to a shallow angle, maybe 15 degrees, then it straightened again. Then it tilted the other way. The motion was smooth, mechanical. No wobble, no drift. Grant, Renee said. Her voice had an edge I didn't like. I see it. The line stopped rotating and held a new position, angled slightly upward. And then, without warning, it moved toward us. Not like a plane. Not like anything that has to push through air. 1 second, it was 10 degrees above the horizon. The next second, it was 20 degrees. Then 30. It closed distance without crossing the space between. It just appeared closer each time I blinked. My hands tightened on the yoke. Should we turn? Renee asked. I didn't answer right away. Part of me wanted to bank hard and get off our heading, but another part of me, the part that's kept me alive in bad weather, told me to hold course and not make sudden moves when you don't understand what you're dealing with. The line stopped. It sat directly ahead of us, maybe 2 miles out, maybe less. It was hard to judge distance against something with no reference point. The aurora around it pulsed once bright green, then faded to a dull glow. The line remained, then the air around us changed. I felt it before I saw it. A pressure drop, my ears popped. The temperature inside the cabin fell, not slowly, fast. I watched the gauge on the heater drop from 68 degrees to 52 degrees in the span of maybe 10 seconds. Frost formed on the inside edge of the windscreen. I could see my breath. "What the hell?" the grad student said from the back. The engines stuttered, both of them. A hiccup in the rhythm. I glanced at the fuel flow. It dipped, then recovered. The manifold pressure wavered. I pushed the throttle forward slightly to compensate. The engines caught and smoothed out. Then the line split. It didn't break apart. It divided cleanly into 3 separate lines, each one identical in brightness and thickness. They arranged themselves in a perfect triangle, points up, and the triangle began to rotate around a center point that I couldn't see. "Grant, we need to turn," Renee said. "Agreed," I said. I disengaged the autopilot and banked left, a smooth 30-degree turn to get us off the heading. The triangle rotated faster. The lines moved in unison, keeping their spacing exact. And as we turned, the triangle turned with us. It stayed locked on our nose. I leveled out on a new heading, 290 degrees, away from Barrow and back toward the interior. The triangle followed. I tried a shallow climb. It climbed. I dropped 500 feet. It dropped. "It's matching us," Renee said. "I know." The grad student's voice came through the intercom. "What is that thing?" "We don't know," I said. "Sit tight and keep your seatbelt on." I keyed the radio again. "Any station. Twin Otter, November 7-2 Tango Foxtrot, declaring emergency. We have unknown aerial phenomenon and total comm failure." Static burst through the headset. Not clean static. Broken. Choppy. Like someone was keying a mic in rapid pulses. Then a voice came through. Male. Flat. No accent I could place. "Twin Otter, November 7-2 Tango Foxtrot. Maintain heading. Do not deviate." I looked at Renee. She shook her head. That wasn't Fairbanks. That wasn't Barrow. That wasn't any controller I'd ever heard. "Who is this?" I asked. No reply. Just the choppy static again. Then the voice repeated. Same words, same flat tone. "Twin Otter, November 7-2 Tango Foxtrot. Maintain heading. Do not deviate." I ignored it and held my turn. The triangle pulsed once. A flash of white light so bright it left spots in my vision. The cockpit lit up like someone had fired a flare inside the plane. Renee shielded her eyes. I blinked hard and forced myself to keep scanning the instruments. When my vision cleared, the triangle was gone. The aurora had returned to normal. Green curtains rippling slowly across the northern horizon. The white lines were nowhere. The radio crackled and a familiar voice came through. "Twin Otter, November 7-2 Tango Foxtrot. Fairbanks Radio. We've been trying to reach you. Do you copy?" Renee grabbed the mic. "Fairbanks, Twin Otter, November 7-2 Tango Foxtrot. We copy. We had total comm loss for approximately 8 minutes. Can you confirm?" "Negative, Twin Otter. We've had continuous contact. Last transmission from you was 3 minutes ago with a position report." I checked my watch. We'd been in that turn for more than 3 minutes. I was sure of it. But the clock on the panel showed a time that matched what Fairbanks was saying. Renee and I looked at each other. Neither of us spoke. "Fairbanks, we're experiencing equipment anomalies," I said. "Requesting priority handling into Barrow." "Copy, Twin Otter. Cleared direct. Barrow weather is reporting clear skies, wind calm, altimeter 30.18. We flew the rest of the leg in silence. The grad student asked a few questions, but I told him we'd discuss it on the ground. Renee kept her hand on the yoke and her eyes on the sky. I watched the instruments. Everything functioned normally. Radios clean, GPS locked. Fuel flow steady. It was as if nothing had happened. We landed at Barrow just after 10 a.m. local time. The sun sat low on the horizon, a pale disk behind thin clouds. The tower cleared us to the ramp. I taxied slowly, feeling every bump in the frozen ground. When I shut down the engines, the silence felt wrong, too complete. We unloaded the pallets in the cold. The grad student thanked us and walked to the terminal building without looking back. Renee and I stood by the nose of the plane. She pointed at the leading edge of the right wing. "Grant," she said, "look at this." The metal was covered in frost. Not the thin dusting you get from cold air. Thick frost, crystallized, the kind that forms when something very cold sits against something warmer for a long time. But the wing hadn't been cold. The heater had been on. The plane had been pressurized and warm inside. I walked around the nose. The left wing had the same frost pattern. And on the nose itself, directly in front of the windscreen, the paint had a discoloration. A faint scorch mark, not black. More like a tarnish. The metal underneath felt warm when I touched it with my bare hand. "That's not ice damage," Renee said. "No," I agreed. We filed a maintenance report with the station manager and requested an inspection. A mechanic came out an hour later. He scraped a sample of the frost into a bag and ran a thermal gun over the nose. The surface temperature read 47 degrees Fahrenheit, warmer than ambient by more than 30 degrees. "How long you been on the ground?" he asked. "About 90 minutes, I said. He frowned and ran the gun again. Same result. He took photos and said he'd send the frost sample to the lab. He didn't ask what happened. I didn't volunteer. Renee and I walked to the operations shack and sat with coffee. The heat felt good. She stared at the wall for a long time before speaking. "That voice on the radio," she said. "That wasn't ATC." "I know. So who was it?" "I don't know." We sat in silence. Outside, the wind picked up and pushed loose snow across the ramp in thin white lines. The sky was empty. No aurora, no lights, just gray. We stayed in Barrow that night at a small crew house the Weather Service keeps for pilots. 2 rooms, a kitchenette, and a space heater that rattled when the wind hit the building. I didn't sleep well. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that white line rotating in the sky. When I did sleep, I dreamed of the cockpit filling with frost and the controls going dead in my hands. At 6 a.m., Renee knocked on my door. She looked like she hadn't slept either. We made coffee and sat at the small table without talking much. Around 7:30, my phone rang. It was our operations manager in Fairbanks. "Grant, I got the maintenance report from Barrow," he said. "What happened up there?" I gave him the short version. "Comm failure. Equipment anomalies. Strange frost on the airframe. I didn't mention the lights. I didn't mention the voice. I told myself I'd add that later if it became relevant." "The mechanic sent photos," he said. "That nose looks cooked." "It felt warm to the touch," I said. "Warm? In February, on a plane that's been sitting on the ramp?" "I know how it sounds." He paused. I could hear him typing. "The lab won't have results on the frost sample for a few days. In the meantime, I'm grounding the aircraft pending a full inspection. I've got another Twin Otter at Dead Horse. I'll have it flown down to pick you and Renee up this afternoon." Understood. "And Grant, if something else happened up there, I need to know." I looked at Renee. She was watching me. "We saw lights," I said. "In the aurora. They didn't behave normally." "What do you mean?" "They held position. They moved in formation. One of them looked like a straight line that tracked us for several minutes. The line went quiet. Then, did you get any photos?" "No, it happened fast and we were focused on flying the plane." "Okay, write it up, everything you remember. Send it to me by tonight. I'll forward it to the NTSB and see what they say." We spent the rest of the morning writing the report. Renee and I sat side by side with our laptops and went through the timeline step by step. Times, headings, altitudes, equipment behavior. What we saw, what we heard. We kept it factual, no speculation, no drama, just the sequence. When we finished, I read it back. It sounded insane even to me, but it was accurate. "You think they'll believe us?" Renee asked. "I don't know," I said, "but it's what happened." The replacement plane arrived just after 2 p.m. Different pilot. Younger guy I'd met once before. He didn't ask questions. We loaded our gear and took off into a clear sky. The flight back to Fairbanks was smooth. No aurora, no lights, just cold air and empty space. 3 days later, the lab results came back. The frost sample from the wing contained water ice. No unusual isotopes, no contaminants, just frozen water vapor. But the concentration of the crystals was abnormal. The report noted that the structure resembled what you'd see in a high-altitude cirrus cloud, not on the surface of a wing at ground level. The metallurgy on the nose scorch showed surface oxidation consistent with rapid heating, followed by rapid cooling. The report estimated the metal had reached over 400 degrees Fahrenheit at some point. Our operations manager called me into his office. He had the lab report on his desk along with our written account and a printout of something else I didn't recognize. "Sit down, Grant," he said. I sat. He pushed the printout toward me. It was a communication log from Fairbanks Air Route Traffic Control. Timestamps and transmissions. I scanned it and found the window where we'd lost contact. "They're saying we had continuous contact," I said. "Correct," he said. "But look at the transcript." I read it closer. The log showed transmissions from our plane every 3 minutes during the window in question. Position reports, routine stuff. But I knew we hadn't made those calls. I'd been too focused on the lights and the equipment failures. "That's not possible," I said. "We had total comm loss. Both radios were dead." "I believe you," he said. "But according to this, you were talking to them the whole time. Then someone else was transmitting on our tail number." He leaned back in his chair and rubbed his face. "The NTSB reviewed everything. They don't have an explanation. The equipment checks out. The radios tested fine. The GPS logs show a clean track with no deviations. But your account and the physical evidence say something else happened." "What do they think?" "Officially, unexplained equipment malfunction and possible environmental interference from the aurora. Unofficially, they're filing it under unknown." "That's it?" "That's it, unless you or Renee have something else to add." I thought about the voice on the radio. Maintain heading. Do not deviate. I thought about the triangle of lines matching our every move. I thought about the grad student in the back who'd seen the same thing we did. "Did anyone interview the passenger?" I asked. "He declined," the manager said. "Said he didn't see anything unusual and didn't want to be involved." That surprised me. The kid had been glued to the window. He'd asked questions, but I didn't push it. "All right," I said. "What's the status on the plane?" "Cleared to fly. Repairs were minor. Some surface work on the nose. New radio antennas as a precaution. It's back in service." I nodded. He looked at me for a long moment. "You want to keep flying the Barrow route?" he asked. "I don't know yet," I said. "Fair enough. Take a few days. Let me know." I left the office and found Renee in the break room. She'd already heard. We sat with bad coffee and stared at the snow out the window. "You believe the radio log?" she asked. "No, me neither." We didn't fly together for the next 2 weeks. Renee took a cargo run to Bethel. I flew a surveyor down to the peninsula. Normal work. Normal skies. But every time I climbed above 5,000 feet at night and saw the aurora start to shimmer, my chest tightened. I kept my hand on the yoke and my eyes on the instruments, and I avoided looking north. In early March, I got assigned to another Barrow run. Different plane, different cargo, but the same route. I requested Renee as co-pilot and she agreed. We didn't talk about why. We just knew. The flight was scheduled for late afternoon with an arrival just after dark. The weather was good. Clear skies, light winds. We pre-flighted the plane together and went through every system twice. Radios, GPS, backup power, everything checked. We took off from Fairbanks at 4:17 p.m. The sun was already low, painting the sky in shades of orange and deep blue. We climbed to 9,000 feet and settled into the cruise. No passengers this time, just the two of us and 3 pallets of equipment in the back. An hour into the flight, the aurora appeared. Green curtains stretched across the northern horizon. Normal movement, normal colors. I watched it for a few minutes and relaxed slightly. Maybe the first event had been a fluke. Maybe we'd never see it again. Then Renee spoke. "Grant, 10 o'clock, low." I looked. A single point of white light sat just above the horizon. Steady, not blinking, not moving. Just there. "Could be a tower," I said. "We're 140 miles from the coast," Renee said. "There's no tower out here." I checked the sectional chart. She was right. Nothing but tundra and frozen lakes below us. No structures, no roads. The light didn't move. We flew toward it because it was on our route. As we closed the distance, the light grew brighter but didn't resolve into anything identifiable. No shape, no beam, just a point of white against the dark land. Then it blinked out. 1 second there, the next second gone. I scanned the horizon. Nothing. "Did you see where it went?" I asked. "No," Renee said. "It just stopped." We continued on course. The aurora intensified. Bands of green and purple rippled overhead. Beautiful and normal. I started to think we'd imagined the light. Then the radio crackled. "Twin Otter, November 72 Tango Foxtrot. Turn right, heading 045. The voice was male, flat, emotionless. The same voice from the first flight. I didn't touch the controls. Renee keyed her mic. "Say again, who is this?" "Turn right heading 045. Maintain altitude." "Negative," I said. "We're on course for Barrow. Identify yourself." No response. Just silence. Then the temperature in the cockpit dropped. Fast, I could see my breath. Frost crept across the edges of the windscreen. The GPS flickered and the position jumped wildly. Same as before. "Here we go," Renee said quietly. The white point reappeared, this time directly ahead of us. And it wasn't a point anymore. It was a line. Horizontal, thin, bright, the exact same line from the first flight. "Grant, we need to turn," Renee said. Agreed. I banked right, a 30-degree turn to the southeast. Away from the line, away from Barrow. The line followed. It rotated to match our new heading and stayed locked on our nose. "It's doing it again," Renee said. The engine stuttered, both at once. The manifold pressure dropped. I pushed the throttles forward and the engines caught. But the rhythm was rough. I could feel the vibration through the yoke. The line split into 3, triangle formation, points up. They began to rotate. Slowly at first, then faster. The aurora around them dimmed and the sky went dark, except for those 3 lines of white light. And then we dropped. Not a stall, not turbulence. A drop. The plane fell 800 feet in less than 3 seconds. My stomach lurched. Loose items in the back hit the ceiling. Renee grabbed the yoke with both hands. I pulled back hard, and the controls felt mushy. The altitude unwound on the gauge. 8,200 feet, 7,900, 7,600. "Grant!" Renee shouted. The engines roared back to life at full power without me touching the throttles. The plane leveled hard. Too hard. I felt the G-force push me into my seat. The airspeed jumped. The vertical speed indicator swung from 2,000 feet per minute to 1,500 in a heartbeat. We climbed. Fast. faster than the plane should be able to climb. The engines screamed, the airspeed redlined. I pulled the throttles to idle, and the engines didn't respond. We kept climbing, 9,000 feet, 10,000, 11,000. The air got thinner. The temperature inside the cockpit fell further. I could see ice forming on the instruments. The altimeter needle spun. 12,000, 13,000. The rate of climb didn't slow. "We're going to stall," Renee yelled. I knew. The airspeed was dropping even though we were climbing. The wings couldn't hold this angle at this altitude. I pushed the yoke forward. It wouldn't move. Locked. Like something had taken control. At 14,200 feet, the plane stopped climbing. It just stopped. The engines went to idle on their own. The airspeed stabilized at 95 knots. We hung there in the sky, level and steady, like we were sitting on a shelf. The triangle of lights moved closer. Not fast. Deliberate. They approached from ahead and below, rising toward us. As they got nearer, I could see they weren't lines anymore. They were edges. Borders of something larger. Something I couldn't see fully but could sense in the way the stars behind them disappeared. The thing was huge. The three lines were just corners of it. A shape that filled my field of vision. Dark. Massive. Silent. It rose until it was level with us, maybe 500 feet off our nose. And then it stopped. We sat there. The plane hanging in the air. The dark shape in front of us. The aurora gone. The sky black except for the stars and those three white lines that marked the edges of something I didn't understand. "Grant," Renee whispered. "What do we do?" "I don't know," I said. The radio crackled again. The same voice. "Do not deviate." And then, without warning, we dropped again. Faster this time. The altimeter spun backward. 13,000. 12,000, 10,000. The engines stayed at idle. The controls stayed locked. We fell like a stone. At 8,000 feet, the controls released. I grabbed the yoke and pulled back. The plane responded. The engines spooled up. I leveled us at 7,500 feet and checked the systems. Everything was back to normal. Radios working, jeeps locked, temperature rising. The frost on the windscreen melted and ran in streaks. I looked for the shape. It was gone. The triangle was gone. The sky was empty. Just the aurora returning to its slow ripple and the distant glow of Barrow on the horizon. Renee's hands shook. Mine did too. We didn't speak. We just flew. I turned us back on course and let the autopilot take over. My legs felt weak. We landed at Barrow 20 minutes later. The tower cleared us without comment. On the ramp, we shut down the engines and sat in silence. After a long moment, Renee unbuckled and climbed out. I followed. The nose of the plane had the same scorch mark. The wings had the same frost. And this time there was something else. On the belly of the fuselage near the cargo door, 3 parallel lines had been burned into the paint. Each line was perfectly straight, each one about 3 feet long, evenly spaced. We stood in the cold and stared at them. I didn't have words. Renee walked back to the nose and ran her hand over the scorch mark. "We can't keep flying this route," she said. "I know." We filed another report. This time I included everything. The voice, the loss of control, the forced climb and the drop, the shape we couldn't fully see, the marks on the fuselage. I didn't care how it sounded. It happened, and we had physical evidence. Our operations manager read the report twice. Then he called us both into his office. He looked older than I remembered. Tired. "I spoke with the FAA," he said. "They want to interview both of you separately. They also want to inspect the plane again." "When?" I asked. "Tomorrow, An investigator is flying up from Anchorage tonight." Renee and I exchanged a look. "Are we in trouble?" she asked. "No," he said. "But they need to understand what happened. 2 incidents on the same route with the same crew? That raises questions." The investigator was a woman in her 50s named Patricia Keller. She had the calm demeanor of someone who'd spent years listening to pilots describe things that didn't make sense. She interviewed me first in a small conference room at the Weather Service building. Recorder on the table, notepad in front of her. "Walk me through the second flight," she said. "Start from takeoff." I did. I gave her every detail I could remember. Times, altitudes, the lights, the loss of control, the marks on the plane. She took notes and didn't interrupt. When I finished, she sat back. "You said the controls locked," she said. "Both yoke and throttles?" "Correct." "And they released at 8,000 feet?" "Yes." "Did you try to override them while they were locked?" "I pulled on the yoke with everything I had. It didn't move." She made a note. "And the voice on the radio. You're certain it wasn't ATC?" "I'm certain." "Could it have been another aircraft?" "It addressed us by tail number, twice." She nodded. "The Fairbanks ATC log shows no record of those transmissions. No other aircraft reported being on frequency at that time." "I know how that sounds," I said. "It sounds like you're telling the truth," she said. "The physical evidence backs your account. The problem is we don't have an explanation that fits the evidence." "What do you mean?" She flipped through her notes. "The scorch marks on the nose tested positive for extreme heat exposure. The frost samples contained isotopic ratios that don't match surface conditions. The 3 lines on the fuselage belly were made by something that burned through the paint and into the primer in a perfectly straight path. No tool marks, no chemical residue, just heat. So you believe us?" "I believe something happened," she said. "I don't know what." Renee's interview lasted longer. When she came out, her face was pale. We walked to the truck and sat in the cab with the heater running. "What did she ask you?" I said. "Same questions," Renee said. "She showed me the photos of the marks. She asked if I thought it was a weapon." "A weapon?" She didn't say it directly, but she asked if I felt targeted, if I thought the plane was attacked. I thought about that. The forced climb, the loss of control, the voice telling us not to deviate. "Maybe," I said. "Or maybe it was a warning," Renee said. "Warning about what?" "I don't know. But it let us go. Twice. That was true. Whatever it was, it hadn't brought us down. It had controlled us, held us, then released us. I didn't know if that made me feel better or worse." The FAA grounded both of us for 2 weeks pending a full review. They also grounded the plane and sent it to a hangar in Anchorage for a detailed inspection. Renee went back to her apartment in Fairbanks. I stayed at my place south of town and tried not to think about it, but I couldn't stop. Every night I replayed the flights in my head, the white line, the triangle, the shape that filled the sky, the feeling of the controls locking under my hands, the voice on the radio. I started researching. I know how that sounds. I'm a pilot, not a UFO hunter. But I needed to know if anyone else had seen what we saw. I found reports, lots of them. Pilots over Alaska, Canada, Scandinavia. Lights that track their aircraft, radio interference, equipment failures. Most were dismissed as aurora effects or equipment malfunctions. None had physical evidence like we did. Then I found something else. A declassified report from the 1980s. A military cargo plane flying from Elmendorf to a radar station on the North Slope had reported a large, unidentified aerial object that paced them for 18 minutes. The plane experienced radio failure, compass deviations, and engine fluctuations. When they landed, the fuselage had scorch marks on the nose and wings. The report ended with a note: unable to determine origin or nature of object. Crew advised to avoid further discussion. I printed the report and brought it to Renee. She read it in silence. "This is from 40 years ago," she said. "I know. So this has been happening for a long time. Maybe." She set the paper down and looked at me. "What do you think it is?" "I don't know, but I think it's been watching the route, and I think we got too close." The FAA completed their investigation in late March. They found no mechanical failure, no pilot error, no explanation for the physical damage or the reported events. The final report listed the cause as unknown aerial phenomenon with associated equipment anomalies. They cleared us to return to flight status, but recommended we avoid the Barrow route for the foreseeable future. Our operations manager called us in. "I'm reassigning you both," he said. "Grant, you're moving to the southeastern routes, Juneau and Sitka. Renee, I've got a contract slot open for coastal survey work. You'll be based in Cordova." "What about the Barrow run?" I asked. "I'm bringing in a pilot from outside, someone who doesn't know what happened. Less baggage." I should have felt relieved. Instead, I felt uneasy. "You're not going to tell them?" "I'll brief them on the equipment issues. But no, I'm not going to tell them about the lights. They'll either see it themselves or they won't." Renee and I left the office and walked to the parking lot. The spring sun was out and the snow was melting. It felt like a different world from the cold darkness of February. "You think that pilot will be okay?" Renee asked. "I don't know." We stood by her truck. She looked north toward the Brooks Range and the empty tundra beyond. "I keep thinking about what that voice said," she said. "Do not deviate," like we were supposed to stay on a specific path, or stay out of a specific area. Yeah. We said goodbye and she drove off. I haven't flown with Renee since then. We still exchange texts now and then. She's doing well in Cordova. Says the coastal work is calm and predictable. I moved to the southeast routes and fly in weather that's wet but manageable. I don't miss the Arctic, but I think about it. I think about the white line that wouldn't move like anything natural. I think about the triangle that matched our every turn. I think about the dark shape that rose in front of us and filled the sky with something I couldn't see but felt in every part of me. I think about the voice that told us where to go and then let us leave. I did some math. If you draw a line from Fairbanks to Barrow, it crosses over some of the most remote land in North America. No roads, no villages for hundreds of miles, just tundra and ice and the kind of cold that kills you if you're not prepared. If something wanted a place to operate without being seen, that would be a good place. The new pilot flew the Barrow route for 2 months before he quit. I heard about it from another pilot in the break room. No details, just that he didn't want to fly that leg anymore. I didn't ask why. I'm writing this down because I think people should know, not for attention, not for conspiracy theories. Just as a record. If you're a pilot and you fly the northern routes, watch the aurora. If you see a white line that holds position, turn around. If you hear a voice on the radio that doesn't identify itself and tells you where to go, don't listen. If your controls lock and your plane starts to climb or drop on its own, do whatever you can to get it back. And if you land and find marks on your plane that shouldn't be there, document them. Take photos. File a report. Don't let it disappear. I don't know what we saw. I don't know if it was a machine or something else. I don't know if it was interested in us or just in that stretch of sky. What I do know is that it was real. It left marks. It took control of our plane. It spoke to us. And it let us go. I still fly. I still love the work. But I don't fly north anymore. I don't watch the aurora the same way. And when I see a light in the sky that doesn't behave like it should, I turn around. No hesitation. No second guessing. I learned that lesson twice. I don't need a third. Renee and I talked once about going back. Just to see. Just to know. We both decided against it. Some things you don't need to understand. Some places you don't need to return to. That stretch of sky between Fairbanks and Barrow belongs to something else now. Maybe it always did. If you're reading this because you're planning a flight up there, I'm not telling you not to go. I'm just telling you to be ready. Keep your eyes on the instruments. Keep your hand on the controls. And if the sky starts to do things that don't make sense, trust your gut and get out. We were lucky. Not everyone might be. The marks on that plane are still there. They repainted the nose, but the metal underneath remembers. The 3 lines on the belly were too deep to buff out, so they painted over them. If you know where to look, you can still see the outline. The plane flies the interior routes now. Short hops, low altitude, safe. I saw it on the ramp last week. I walked up to it and stood by the belly. I ran my hand over the paint where the lines were. The surface was smooth, but I could feel it. A warmth that didn't match the ambient temperature. Like the metal was holding on to something. I don't know what's up there. I don't know what it wants. I just know it's there. Watching. Waiting. And sometimes when you fly too close, it reaches out. We got touched. We got marked, and we got let go. That's all I have. That's all I can tell you. The rest is just frozen sky and empty air and a voice that told us where to go and wouldn't say why. If you fly that route, be careful. Be ready. And if you see a white line in the aurora that doesn't move like it should, remember this. You're not alone up there, and whatever's with you, it's been there longer than we have. I'm a meteorologist with the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. For the past 6 years, I've rotated through remote research stations across Alaska, collecting data on Arctic weather patterns and atmospheric conditions. Most of that work is routine: temperature readings, wind speed, barometric pressure. You log the numbers, send them to Anchorage, and watch the sky. The station where this happens sits 47 miles northwest of Deadhorse on a flat stretch of tundra that runs to the horizon in every direction. No trees, no hills, just frozen ground and sky. My name is Nora Lyard. I'm 34. I grew up in Minnesota, so cold weather doesn't bother me the way it bothers people from warmer states. But Arctic cold is different. It's not just the temperature. It's the way the air feels thin and brittle, like it could crack if you hit it hard enough. It's the way sound travels wrong. A voice that should carry 100 yards dies after 20. A crack of ice that should be soft sounds like a gunshot. The station is called Point Lonely. The name isn't poetic, it's literal. One prefab building, 12 by 20 feet, insulated walls, a metal roof, and a diesel generator that runs 20 hours a day. Inside, you have a workspace with computers and monitoring equipment, a small kitchenette, and a sleeping area with 2 bunks separated by a privacy curtain. Outside, you have an antenna mast, a weather station tower, and a fuel shed. That's it. The nearest human being is at Deadhorse, and they're only there if the oil crews are working. I was stationed there from January 10th to February 14th with a technician named Calvin Reed. He's younger than me by 7 years, quieter, and better with equipment. If something stops working, Calvin can usually fix it. He's from Oregon. This was his second winter rotation in the Arctic. We got along fine. We didn't talk much, but we didn't need to. The work was straightforward, and the days had a rhythm. Morning readings, maintenance checks, data uploads, meals, sleep, repeat. The radio was our primary link to the outside. It sat on a shelf above the workbench, a standard VHF transceiver hardwired to the antenna mast outside. We used it for daily check-ins with Deadhorse and for weather updates. The protocol was simple. Every morning at 0800 and every evening at 1800, we'd call in and confirm we were operational. If we missed a check-in, they'd send someone to investigate. The radio stayed on all the time, volume low, tuned to the emergency frequency. Background noise, static. Occasionally a voice from a plane passing overhead or a crew working the oil fields. Nothing unusual. Until January 27th. That night, I went to bed just after 2200. Calvin was still awake, working on a data set at his laptop. The wind outside was steady, about 20 knots, and the building creaked the way it always does when the wind pushes against it. The temperature had dropped to minus 38 Fahrenheit. Normal for late January. I pulled the sleeping bag up to my chin and listened to Calvin typing in the main room. After a while, the typing stopped, and I heard him move to his bunk on the other side of the curtain. The generator hummed. The wind hissed against the walls. I fell asleep. At 01:30, the radio woke me. Not a voice, not static, just the click of the unit powering on. I know that sound. We turn the radio off sometimes when we're doing maintenance or when the static gets too loud. The power switch has a distinct click. Sharp, metallic. I heard it clearly. I sat up in my bunk and listened. The radio hissed with carrier wave static. Then a voice came through. Male. Steady. No accent. No emotion. We are not cold. That was it. 4 words. Then silence. No static. No carrier wave. Just dead air. I waited. My heart rate climbed. I heard Calvin shift in his bunk. The curtain moved and his face appeared in the dim light from the computer monitor in the main room. "Did you hear that?" he whispered. "Yeah." We got up and moved into the main room. The radio sat on the shelf. Power light on. Volume knob at its usual position. I checked the frequency. It was set to 121.5 MHz, the emergency channel. Exactly where it should be. Calvin reached for the mic. "Who is this? Identify yourself." No response. He tried again, still nothing. I leaned over and checked the settings. Everything looked normal. The squelch was set properly. The antenna connection was solid. There was no reason for the radio to turn itself on. The power switch is mechanical. You have to push it. It doesn't toggle on its own. "Did you touch it earlier?" I asked. "No," Calvin said. "I haven't touched the radio since the 1800 check-in." I looked at the switch. It was in the on position. I know I didn't turn it on. Calvin said he didn't either. I tried to think of an explanation. A power surge from the generator, but that wouldn't flip a mechanical switch. A short in the wiring. That would blow a fuse, not turn the unit on cleanly. "What did the voice say?" Calvin asked. "We are not cold," I said. He frowned. "That's it?" "That's it." We stood there in the cold room, staring at the radio. The static returned, low and steady. Normal background noise. No voice. No transmission. Calvin turned the volume down and we waited. 5 minutes passed. 10. Nothing. "Maybe someone was testing a transmitter," Calvin said. "Keyed the wrong frequency." "At 113, I said. "In the middle of nowhere?" "I don't know, but radios don't turn themselves on." He was right, they don't. But I'd heard the click. I'd heard the voice. And I knew the power switch had been off when I went to bed because I'd glanced at it out of habit. The power light had been dark. We decided to log it. Calvin opened the station journal and wrote down the time, the frequency, and the message. I added a note about the radio turning on by itself. It felt strange to write it down, like committing to something we didn't understand. "Should we call Dead Horse?" Calvin asked. I thought about that. What would we say? The radio turned itself on, and someone said they weren't cold. It sounded absurd even in my head. "Let's wait," I said. "If it happens again, we'll report it." We went back to bed. I didn't sleep much. I kept listening for the click. It didn't come. The wind picked up and the building shook. I heard Calvin shifting in his bunk. Neither of us said anything. At 0800, we did the morning check-in. Deadhorse responded normally. We gave them the weather readings and confirmed we were operational. I didn't mention the radio incident. It felt too strange to bring up over the air. The day passed without event. We took readings. Calvin ran diagnostics on the monitoring equipment. I uploaded data and reviewed the week's logs. The sky was overcast and gray, the kind of gray that makes it hard to tell where the ground ends and the sky begins. At 1400, I went outside to check the weather station tower. The cold hit me the second I opened the door. -41 with wind chill pushing it lower. I wore a heavy parka, insulated pants, boots rated to -60, and a balaclava that covered everything but my eyes. Even with all that, the air burned in my lungs. The tower stood about 30 yards from the building. It's a simple structure. 10 feet tall, white-painted metal with sensors mounted at the top for wind speed, temperature, and humidity. I walked to it slowly, checking my footing on the ice. The tundra up here is deceptive. It looks flat and solid, but underneath the snow there are rocks and frozen tussocks that can twist an ankle if you're not careful. When I reached the tower, I stopped. The snow around the base was smooth, undisturbed. No animal tracks, no wind drift patterns, just a flat, white surface. That's normal. But what wasn't normal was the antenna mast. The mast stands 50 feet from the building in the opposite direction from the tower. It's a 20-foot aluminum pole with the radio antenna mounted at the top and guy wires anchored in concrete footings. I could see it from where I stood. The top section was dark, not white with frost, not silver with ice, dark, like the metal had been scorched. I walked toward it. The snow crunched under my boots. My breath plumed in front of me and the moisture froze on my balaclava. When I got close, I stopped and stared. The antenna was melted. Not the whole mast, just the top 4 feet. The aluminum had sagged and drooped like candle wax. The antenna element itself, a thin rod that should have been straight, was bent at an angle and the tip was rounded. Smooth, like it had been dipped in something hot and then cooled. I pulled off my glove and reached up to touch the metal. It was cold. Not warm, not even ambient temperature, colder than the air, the kind of cold that sticks to your skin. I pulled my glove back on and stepped back. The mast should not look like this. Aluminum doesn't melt at these temperatures, it doesn't sag or droop. The melting point of aluminum is over 1,200 degrees Fahrenheit. Even if something had heated the metal, there would be scorch marks on the snow, there would be steam, there would be some sign of heat. But the snow around the base of the mast was untouched. Smooth, flat, as if nothing had happened. I turned and scanned the horizon. Flat, white tundra in every direction. No lights, no movement, no tracks. Just empty space and the gray sky pressing down. I went back inside. Calvin was at the computer reviewing data. I pulled off my parka and shook the frost from my balaclava. "The antenna's melted," I said. He looked up. "What?" "The top of the mast. The aluminum is melted. Looks like someone held a torch to it." He stood and walked to the door. I followed him outside. We stood together in the cold and looked at the mast. Calvin didn't say anything for a long time. Then he walked toward it. I stayed by the building and watched. He circled the mast, crouched down, and examined the base. He stood and touched the metal. Then he came back. "That's not possible," he said. "I know. There's no heat source out here. No equipment that could do that. And even if there was, the snow would show it. I know. We went back inside. Calvin pulled up the weather logs on his computer. Temperature readings from the tower for the past 24 hours. Nothing unusual. Steady cold, no spikes, no anomalies. The data showed exactly what we'd expect for late January in the Arctic. Could it be old damage? Calvin asked. Something that happened before we got here? No, I said. I checked the mast on January 12th. It was fine. He rubbed his face. Okay, so something melted the antenna between January 12th and today, in sub-zero temperatures, with no heat source. And no sign of heat transfer, I added. We sat in silence. The generator hummed. The wind rattled the door. Calvin opened the station journal and wrote down the observation. Antenna mast damaged. Cause unknown. He dated it and signed it. We should report this, he said. Agreed. At 1800, we called Dead Horse. I explained the situation to the operator. Damaged antenna, unknown cause. Request for guidance. The operator told us to document it with photos and submit a maintenance request. Someone would come out in the next few days to assess it. Can you still transmit? The operator asked. I glanced at the radio. We're talking to you right now. Then you're fine. Log it and wait for the maintenance crew. We signed off. Calvin and I looked at each other. That's it? He said. That's it. The rest of the evening was quiet. We ate a simple meal, freeze-dried stew and crackers. I did some reading. Calvin worked on his laptop. Neither of us talked about the antenna or the radio. At 21:30, I went to bed. At 1:13, the radio turned on again. I heard the click. Sharp. Clear. My eyes opened. I lay still in my bunk and listened. The carrier wave's static hissed. Then the voice. We are not cold. Same voice, same tone, same 4 words. I sat up and pulled the curtain aside. Calvin was already in the main room, standing by the radio. He looked at me. Same message, he said. I heard. He grabbed the mic. Who is this? Identify yourself. The static cut out. Dead air. Calvin tried again. No response. He checked the settings. Everything was normal. The power switch was in the ON position. The frequency was 121.5. The volume was where it had been. I got up and joined him. Did you see it turn on? No. I heard the click and then the voice. I looked at the power switch. We need to turn it off, physically, and see if it happens again. Calvin nodded. He reached over and flipped the switch to off. The power light went dark. The static stopped. We stood there in the silence and waited. 5 minutes passed. The switch stayed off. No click, no voice, just the wind and the generator. We should stay up, I said. See if it happens again. We pulled chairs over to the workbench and sat facing the radio. Calvin made coffee. We drank it slowly and watched the power switch. The building creaked. The wind pressed against the walls. My eyes felt heavy, but I forced them to stay open. At 0147, I saw movement outside the window. Not a shape. Not a figure. Just light. A pale blue glow that swept across the snow beyond the glass. It moved slowly, left to right, like someone was shining a flashlight across the tundra, but the light didn't have a source. It didn't come from a beam. It just existed in a band about 6 feet wide, moving steadily across my field of vision. Calvin, I said quietly. Look. He turned and saw it. We both stood and moved to the window. The light continued its sweep. It passed over the weather tower and kept going. When it reached the antenna mast, it stopped. The blue glow intensified. It wrapped around the mast and climbed toward the melted section at the top. The metal began to glow, not red like fire, white, bright enough that I had to squint. The light held for maybe 3 seconds. Then it released and moved on, sweeping past the building and out toward the eastern horizon. The glow faded. The tundra went dark again. I looked at Calvin. His face was pale. "Did you see that?" he whispered. "Yeah." We stood at the window for a long time. The light didn't return. The sky was black. The stars were out, hard and bright against the void. No aurora, no clouds, just stars and the flat, dark line of the horizon. Behind us, the radio clicked on. We both turned. The power light was glowing. The switch was in the on position. The carrier wave static hissed. And then the voice. "We are not cold." Calvin reached for the mic. His hand shook. "Who are you? What do you want?" The static cut, a pause, then the voice again. Different words this time. "The sky is open." Silence. No static, no carrier wave, just dead air. Calvin and I stared at the radio. My heart hammered in my chest. I felt cold. Not from the temperature in the room, from something else. "Nora," Calvin said. His voice was tight. "We need to leave." I nodded. "Get the gear. I'll call Dead Horse." I grabbed the sat phone from the charging dock and stepped toward this window. As I did, the blue light returned. This time, it didn't sweep. It dropped from directly above the building and spread across the snow in a circle around us. The light was so bright I couldn't see beyond it. It pressed against the windows like water against glass. And inside that light, I heard a sound. Not a hum, not a vibration, a tone. Low and constant. It came from everywhere at once and made my teeth ache. The walls of the building shook. The coffee cups rattled on the shelf. Calvin grabbed the edge of the workbench to steady himself. The tone climbed in pitch. My vision blurred. I tried to dial the sat phone, but my fingers wouldn't work right. The numbers on the screen doubled and swam. Calvin shouted something, but I couldn't hear him over the sound. And then it stopped. The light cut out. The tone vanished. The building went still. I blinked hard, and my vision cleared. Calvin was on the floor, breathing hard. The radio was off. The power light was dark. The switch was in the off position. I looked out the window. The tundra was black. The stars were there. The horizon was a straight line. Everything looked normal. But I knew it wasn't. "We're leaving," I said. "Now." We packed in under 10 minutes. Emergency bags with food, water, a tent, sleeping bags and a portable stove, extra fuel, flares, the sat phone. I grabbed the station journal and the laptop with the data logs. Calvin pulled on his parka and boots and loaded the bags by the door. "Where are we going?" he asked. "Dead Horse," I said. 47 miles. We'll take the snowmobile." We kept a single snowmobile in the fuel shed for emergencies. It was old but reliable. Calvin had checked it 3 days ago. Full tank, good battery, no issues. It would get us to Dead Horse if we pushed it. I tried the sat phone again. This time it worked. I dialed the emergency contact for Dead Horse operations. It rang 4 times before someone picked up. "Dead Horse Ops. This is Point Lonely Station," I said. "We're evacuating. Immediate extraction requested." There was a pause. "Say again?" "We're evacuating the station. We need pickup as soon as possible. What's your emergency?" I looked at Calvin. What could I say? The radio turns itself on. A light circled the building. I heard a voice that said the sky is open. "Equipment failure and environmental hazard," I said. "We're not safe to remain on site." Another pause. "Copy. Stand by." The line went quiet. I waited. Calvin checked the bags and zipped his parka to his chin. After a minute, the voice came back. "Point Lonely. We can have a bird in the air at first light. That's approximately 0930. Can you hold until then?" I checked my watch. It was 0203. More than 7 hours. "Negative," I said. "We're leaving now. Snowmobile to Dead Horse. ETA approximately 4 hours. Monitor this frequency." "Understood. We'll have a warming hut ready. Report when you're 10 miles out." "Copy." I hung up and clipped the phone to my belt. Calvin opened the door. The cold poured in like water. We grabbed the bags and stepped outside. The sky was clear. The stars were so bright they looked close enough to touch. The Milky Way stretched overhead in a dense band of light. No aurora, no glow. Just black sky and white tundra and the thin line where they met. The wind had died. It was completely still, that kind of stillness that feels wrong in the Arctic. We walked to the fuel shed. Calvin unlocked the padlock and pulled the door open. The snowmobile sat inside, covered with a tarp. We pulled the tarp off and loaded the bags into the cargo rack. Calvin checked the fuel. Full. He primed the engine and pulled the starter cord. The engine turned over on the second pull and settled into a rough idle. White exhaust plumed in the cold air. I climbed on behind Calvin and wrapped my arms around his waist. He twisted the throttle and we rolled out of the shed. The headlight cut a narrow beam across the snow. He turned southeast toward Dead Horse and opened the throttle. The snowmobile lurched forward and we accelerated across the flat ground. The ride was rough. The tundra looks smooth, but it's not. Underneath the snow there are rocks and ice ridges and tussocks that jar the suspension. Calvin kept the speed around 30 miles per hour. Fast enough to cover ground, but slow enough to avoid hitting something hidden. The engine noise was loud. It drowned out everything else. I kept my head down and my arms tight around Calvin and tried not to think about what we'd left behind. After about 20 minutes, Calvin slowed down. I lifted my head and looked over his shoulder. He was staring at something ahead. I followed his gaze and saw it. A blue light. Small. Distant. Sitting on the horizon directly in our path. Calvin stopped the snowmobile. The engine idled. We sat in the cold and watched the light. It didn't move. It didn't pulse. It just sat there like a star that had fallen to the ground. "What is that?" Calvin asked. "I don't know." "Should we go around it?" I thought about that. The light was directly southeast. Dead Horse was southeast. If we went around, we'd add distance and time. And we didn't know if going around would help. The light could move, it could follow. We didn't understand what it was or what it wanted. "Keep going," I said. "Straight line. If it moves, we'll react." Calvin nodded. He twisted the throttle and we accelerated again. The light grew larger as we approached. It resolved into a shape, not a point, a sphere, hovering about 3 feet above the snow, pale blue. Bright enough to cast shadows on the ground. No sound, no heat shimmer, just light. As we got closer, Calvin slowed again. The sphere sat about 100 yards ahead. We crept forward. 50 yards, 25. At 10 yards, Calvin stopped. We sat on the idling snowmobile and stared. The sphere was maybe 2 feet in diameter, perfectly round. The light it gave off was steady and cold. Not like a bulb, more like something that existed for its own reasons. Inside the light I could see structure. Thin lines of darker blue that moved slowly, like veins or cracks forming and reforming. It made my eyes hurt to look at it too long. "Should we touch it?" Calvin asked. "No. Then what?" "Go around, wide berth." Calvin turned the handlebars and we veered left, giving the sphere a wide margin. As we passed it, I kept my eyes on it. The sphere didn't move. It didn't react. It just sat there, glowing in the dark. We cleared it by 50 yards and Calvin brought us back on course. I looked back. The sphere was still there, a small blue point in the blackness behind us. Then it blinked out. 1 second there, the next second gone. "Did you see that?" Calvin asked. Yeah, we kept moving. The engine noise filled the silence. I scanned the horizon for more lights. Nothing. Just empty tundra and stars. After another 10 minutes, I started to relax. Maybe the sphere was a fluke. Maybe we'd outrun whatever was happening at the station. Then the radio in my pocket crackled. I'd grabbed a handheld VHF from the station before we left. It was clipped to my belt under my parka. I pulled it out and looked at the screen. The unit was on. The frequency showed 121.5. I didn't remember turning it on. Static hissed from the speaker. Then the voice. "We are not cold." Calvin heard it. He glanced back at me. I keyed the mic. "Who is this?" No response, just static. Then a different voice, female this time. Same flat tone. "The sky is open." I felt my stomach tighten. What does that mean? The static cut, a pause, then both voices at once, overlapping, speaking the same words in unison. "You are seen." The radio went dead. No static, no carrier wave, just silence. I checked the screen. The unit was still on, but the signal strength showed 0, like there was no one transmitting, or like the transmission was coming from somewhere the radio couldn't measure. "Nora," Calvin said. His voice was tight. I looked up. Ahead of us the horizon glowed. Not blue this time, white. A band of light that stretched from north to south as far as I could see. It pulsed slowly, bright, dim, bright, dim, like something breathing. Calvin stopped the snowmobile. "We can't go through that. We have to. Dead horse is on the other side. What if it's not safe?" I looked at the glow. It was maybe 2 miles ahead. Between us and it, the tundra was dark and empty. Behind us, there was nothing but the station and whatever was happening there. "We don't have a choice," I said. Calvin didn't argue. He twisted the throttle, and we moved forward. The glow grew brighter as we approached. The pulsing quickened. I could feel it in my chest now. A rhythm that matched my heartbeat and then didn't. My vision blurred at the edges. I blinked hard and tried to focus. At half a mile out, the temperature dropped. I felt it through my parka. A sudden cold that went deeper than the air. My breath came in short gasps. Frost formed on the inside of my balaclava, and I had to pull it down to breathe. Calvin slowed the snowmobile. His shoulders were tight. "Nora, something's wrong," he said. "I know. Keep going." At a 1/4 mile, the light became a wall. Not a band. A wall, vertical. Stretching up into the sky, I couldn't see the top. It just kept going until it faded into the blackness overhead. The pulse was fast now. So fast it was almost constant. The ground ahead glowed white, and I couldn't see the snow anymore. Just light. Calvin stopped the snowmobile 20 yards from the wall. We sat in the cold and stared. The light didn't move toward us. It just stood there, a vertical plane that cut the world in half. "We can't go through that," Calvin said. "Then we go around, north or south." He looked left, then right. The wall extended in both directions. No end in sight. "How far?" he asked. "I don't know." We sat in silence. The engine idled. My hands were numb even inside my gloves. I looked back the way we'd come. The tundra was dark, no lights, no spheres, no movement. Just Empty space. The radio in my pocket crackled again. I pulled it out. The screen showed a signal. Strong, clear. The voice came through. Male, calm. Turn back. I keyed the mic. Who are you? Turn back. The path is closed. We need to get to Dead Horse. Turn back. The transmission ended. Static hissed for a moment, then cut to silence. I looked at Calvin. His face was pale in the glow from the wall. What do you want to do? I asked. He stared at the light. I don't know. I made the decision. We go back, north, find another route. Calvin nodded. He turned the snowmobile around and we headed north, parallel to the wall. The light stayed on our right side, pulsing steadily. We rode for 10 minutes, 15. The wall didn't end. It just kept going, a vertical line of white that divided the world. Then I saw something ahead, a shape on the snow. Dark, solid. As we got closer, it resolved into a structure. Small, maybe 8 feet tall, metal, a tripod. Calvin slowed and stopped about 30 feet away. We stared at it. The tripod had 3 legs planted in the snow and a platform at the top. On the platform sat a device, rectangular, black, no lights, no markings, just smooth metal. What is that? Calvin asked. I don't know. We sat on the snowmobile and watched. The device didn't move. It didn't make sound. It just sat there, a foreign object on the empty tundra. I pulled out the sat phone and took a photo. The screen showed the image clearly. The tripod, the device, the white wall in the background. Should we check it out? Calvin asked. No, we keep moving. He nodded and twisted the throttle. We moved past the tripod, keeping our distance. As we did, the device on top rotated. Smooth, slow. It tracked us as we passed. I watched it over my shoulder. The device followed our movement until we were out of range. Then it stopped and returned to its original position. It saw us, Calvin said. I know. We kept riding. The wall stayed on our right. The tundra on our left was black and endless. After another 20 minutes, I checked my watch. It was 0347. We'd been riding for over an hour and a half. We should have covered 30 miles by now. But when I checked the GPS on the sat phone, it showed we'd only gone 8. Calvin, stop. He slowed and stopped the snowmobile. I showed him the GPS. We've only gone 8 miles. He looked at the screen. That's not possible. We've been moving at 30 miles per hour for over an hour. I know, but look. He stared at the GPS. Our position showed we were barely northeast of Point Lonely. The dot that marked Dead Horse was still 40 miles away. We'd made almost no progress. How? Calvin asked. I don't know, but something's wrong with time or distance or both. He rubbed his face. What do we do? I looked at the wall of light. It pulsed, steady, unending. I looked at the GPS. The numbers didn't lie. We weren't getting closer to Dead Horse. We were barely moving. We have to try the wall, I said. Are you serious? We don't have another option. We can't go around. We're not making progress, and we're burning fuel. Calvin checked the tank. Half left. Exactly. If we keep going like this, we'll run out before we get anywhere. We have to try. He looked at the wall. What if it kills us? Then we die trying instead of freezing out here. He didn't argue. He turned the snowmobile toward the wall and we faced it head on. The light pulsed. White. Bright. So bright I had to squint. Calvin took a breath. Ready? He asked. No, but do it anyway. He twisted the throttle and we accelerated toward the wall. The light grew brighter, the pulse quickened. I felt the cold dig deeper into my chest. My vision blurred again. I wrapped my arms tight around Calvin and pressed my face against his back. The snowmobile hit the wall. There was no impact, no resistance. We passed through the light like passing through water. For a moment, everything was white, pure, silent. I couldn't hear the engine. I couldn't hear the wind. I couldn't hear anything. My body felt weightless, disconnected, like I was floating in a space that had no direction. Then we were through. The tundra was dark again. The stars were overhead. The engine roared back to life. Calvin slowed the snowmobile and we stopped. I lifted my head and looked back. The wall was behind us, but now it was on the other side. We'd passed through it. "We made it," Calvin said. His voice shook. I checked the GPS. Our position had jumped. We were now 15 miles from Point Lonely, 7 miles closer to Dead Horse. The distance had changed. Like passing through the wall had moved us forward in space. "Let's keep going," I said. Calvin nodded. He opened the throttle and we rode southeast. The tundra stretched ahead, empty, dark. No lights, no walls, just frozen ground and sky. I kept checking the GPS. Our position updated normally. We were making progress. Real progress. After another hour, the horizon began to lighten. Not sunrise, not yet. Just the pre-dawn glow that comes before the sun breaks. Calvin slowed and pointed ahead. Lights, faint, yellow, artificial. "Dead Horse," he said. I felt relief flood through me. "How far?" He checked the speedometer. "Maybe 10 miles. I pulled out the sat phone and called Dead Horse Ops. The line connected. "This is Point Lonely. We're 10 miles out, inbound on snowmobile. Copy, Point Lonely. We have you on approach. Warming hut is ready. Report when you arrive." "Understood." We rode the last stretch in silence. The lights of Dead Horse grew brighter. Shapes resolved into buildings, towers, vehicles. The oil facility sat like a small city on the tundra, lit by floodlights and busy even in the dark hours. Calvin brought us into the outskirts and followed the access road to the operations building. We pulled up to the warming hut and killed the engine. Silence. The kind of silence that feels wrong after hours of engine noise. I climbed off the snowmobile and my legs shook. Calvin dismounted and leaned on the handlebars. A man in a heavy parka stepped out of the warming hut. "You two look like hell," he said. "Get inside. Coffee's hot." We sat in the warming hut with our hands wrapped around coffee mugs and our parkas hanging on hooks by the door. The man who'd greeted us was named Dale. He ran operations at Dead Horse and had been with the oil company for 15 years. He looked at us with the calm concern of someone who'd seen cold weather emergencies before. "So, what happened out there?" he asked. I looked at Calvin. He looked at me. I didn't know where to start. "Equipment failure at the station," I said, "and some environmental anomalies." Dale raised an eyebrow. "Anomalies?" "Lights, strange readings. We didn't feel safe staying." "What kind of lights?" I hesitated. How do you explain a blue sphere hovering above the snow? How do you explain a wall of white light that stretches across the horizon? How do you explain a radio that turns itself on and speaks in voices that shouldn't exist? "We don't know," I said, "but they didn't behave like anything natural." Dale leaned back in his chair. "You're not the first people to report weird things out here." That surprised me. "What do you mean?" "People working the North Slope see stuff all the time. Lights in the sky, strange sounds, equipment acting up for no reason. Most folks don't talk about it because they don't want to sound crazy, but it happens." "What do you think it is?" Calvin asked. Dale shrugged. Atmospheric effects, maybe. The aurora can do strange things. Or maybe it's something else, I don't know, and I don't spend time worrying about it. I just know that when people say they saw something out on the tundra at night, I believe them. He poured more coffee and set the pot down. You two are staying here until we can get you back to Anchorage. There's a supply flight heading out tomorrow afternoon. You'll be on it. What about the station? I asked. We'll send a crew out to secure it, shut down the equipment, recover your gear. After that, someone else can decide what happens to it. I nodded. That was fine with me. I had no intention of going back. We stayed in Dead Horse for the rest of the day. We slept in a crew quarters building, ate hot food, and tried to process what had happened. Calvin didn't talk much. Neither did I. We both knew what we'd seen. We both knew it didn't make sense, and we both knew that no one would believe us if we told the full story. That evening, I sat down with the station journal and wrote a report. I kept it factual. Times, observations, physical evidence. I included the melted antenna, the radio transmissions, the lights, the wall, the tripod. I didn't speculate. I didn't try to explain. I just recorded what happened. When I finished, I showed it to Calvin. He read it without speaking. Then he looked up. "You think they'll believe this?" he asked. "I don't know. But it's the truth." "What about the recordings? Did we get any data?" I'd grabbed the laptop with the station logs before we left. I opened it and checked the files. The temperature readings, wind speeds, and barometric pressure were all there. Normal data. Nothing unusual. But when I opened the audio logs from the radio, the files were corrupted. Just static. No voices, no transmissions. Like the recordings had been wiped. "Nothing," I said. "The audio's gone." Calvin leaned back. "Of course it is." We sat in silence. The wind rattled the window. Outside, the floodlights of Dead Horse cut harsh shadows across the snow. It felt safe here, surrounded by people and machines and light. But I knew that feeling was temporary. Point Lonely was still out there. The station sat empty on the tundra, 47 miles away, and whatever we'd encountered was still there too. The flight to Anchorage left the next afternoon. A twin otter loaded with crew rotations and supplies. Calvin and I sat in the back with our emergency bags at our feet and watched the tundra fall away below us. From the air, the north slope looked endless. Flat white, stretching to the horizon. I scanned for lights, for structures, for anything unusual. I saw nothing, just snow and ice and the faint line of the coast in the distance. When we landed in Anchorage, we were met by a representative from NOAA, a man in his 40s named Garrett. He took us to a conference room and asked us to walk through what happened. We gave him the report. He read it carefully. When he finished, he set it down and looked at us. "This is quite a story," he said. "It's what happened," I said. "I'm not doubting you, but you understand how this reads." "I do." He tapped the report. "The melted antenna is real. We have photos. The radio transmissions are harder to verify because the audio files are corrupted. The lights and the wall? Those are eyewitness accounts. There's no physical evidence." "What about the tripod?" Calvin asked. "We saw a structure on the tundra, a device on a platform. Did you take coordinates?" I checked my notes. "No, the GPS was behaving erratically. I didn't trust the readings." Garrett nodded. "We'll send a team to the station. They'll assess the damage, recover equipment, and document anything unusual. In the meantime, you're both on administrative leave, paid. Take a few weeks, decompress. We'll follow up when we have more information." That was it. No debrief, no interrogation. Just administrative leave and a promise to follow up. Calvin and I left the building and stood on the sidewalk in the cold Anchorage afternoon. Cars passed. People walked by with shopping bags and coffee cups. Everything felt normal, but it didn't feel real. "What now?" Calvin asked. "I don't know," I said. "Go home, wait." We shook hands and went our separate ways. I took a cab to my apartment, dropped my bags, and sat on the couch. The silence felt strange. I turned on the TV. News, weather, sports, normal things. But I couldn't focus. My mind kept going back to the station, to the blue light, to the voice on the radio. 2 weeks later, Garrett called me. "We sent a team to Point Lonely," he said. "They found the station intact, generator running, equipment functional. No signs of damage beyond the antenna." "What about the antenna?" I asked. "Melted, just like you described. Metallurgy confirms extreme heat exposure. We don't know how it happened." "Did they find the tripod?" "No. They searched a 5-mile radius around the station. No structures, no devices, nothing." I felt my stomach tighten. "It was there. We saw it. I believe you. But it's not there now." I asked about the radio transmissions. Garrett said the team monitored the emergency frequency for 3 nights. No unusual activity, no voices, no transmissions. The radio functioned normally. "So what does that mean?" I asked. "It means we don't have answers," Garrett said. "The physical evidence is limited. The eyewitness accounts are credible but unverifiable. Officially, we're calling it an equipment malfunction with environmental anomalies. Unofficially, we don't know what happened to you out there." I thanked him and hung up. I sat in my apartment and stared at the wall. Equipment malfunction, environmental anomalies, convenient labels for things that don't fit. I thought about the voice on the radio. "We are not cold. The sky is open. You are seen." I thought about the wall of light and the way it pulsed like something breathing. I thought about the tripod and the device that tracked our movement. Calvin and I stayed in touch. We met for coffee a few times. We didn't talk about Point Lonely directly. We talked around it. How we were sleeping, how we were adjusting, whether we'd take another rotation in the Arctic. The answer was always no. Neither of us wanted to go back. 3 months later, I got a call from another meteorologist. A woman named Sandra, who'd been assigned to Point Lonely for a spring rotation. She asked if I could answer some questions about the station. I said yes. "Did you experience any equipment issues when you were there?" she asked. "Some," I said carefully. "Why?" "The radio's been acting strange. It turns on by itself sometimes, always at the same time. 0113. I felt my chest tighten. "What does it do?" "It just turns on. No transmissions. Just static. I turn it off and it stays off. But the next night at 0113, it turns on again." "Has it said anything?" There was a pause. "Said anything? Has there been a voice?" "No, just static." "Why? Did you hear voices?" I thought about lying, about telling her no, about letting her figure it out on her own. But I couldn't do that. "Yes," I said, "we heard voices, and we saw lights, and we left because we didn't feel safe." She went quiet. I could hear her breathing on the other end of the line. "What kind of lights?" she asked. "Blue spheres, a wall of white light, a tripod with a device on top." "A tripod?" "Yes, metal, about 8 feet tall, on the tundra northeast of the station." "I'll look for it," she said. "You won't find it. They already searched." "Then what do I do?" I thought about that. What do you do when the radio turns itself on at 0114? What do you do when you hear voices that shouldn't exist? What do you do when the sky opens and you realize you're not alone? If it speaks to you, Don't respond, I said. If you see lights, don't approach them. If you feel unsafe, leave. Don't wait. Don't try to document it, just get out. You think I'm in danger? I think you might be seen, and I don't know what that means. She thanked me and hung up. 2 weeks later, she called again. This time, her voice was different, tight, scared. Nora, I need to tell you something. What happened? Last night, at 0113, the radio turned on, same as always. But this time, there was a voice. My hand tightened on the phone. What did it say? It said my name, just my name, Sandra, 3 times. Then it went silent. I felt cold spread through my chest. It knew her name. It knew who she was, that was new. When Calvin and I were there, the voices had been generic. Statements, not personal, not targeted. Did you respond? I asked. No, I did what you said. I didn't say anything. But Nora, I went outside this morning to check the antenna. It's melted again, same as what happened to you. The top 4 feet are sagging. And there's something else. What? There are marks in the snow, 3 circles, each one about 6 feet across, perfectly round. They form a triangle around the station. I measured them. The spacing is exact, 20 yards between each circle. I closed my eyes. The tripod, the 3 legs, the pattern was repeating. Sandra, you need to leave. I know, but they won't send extraction until next week. The weather's bad, no flights. Then use the snowmobile. Go to Dead Horse, don't wait. I'm alone here. My partner rotated out 3 days ago. They haven't sent a replacement yet. That made it worse. Calvin and I had each other. Sandra was alone at Point Lonely with whatever was circling the station. Listen to me, I said. Pack emergency supplies, keep the snowmobile fueled and ready. If anything else happens, if you see lights or hear voices or feel like something's wrong, you leave immediately. Don't call anyone. Don't wait for clearance, just go. Okay, she said. Her voice was small. And Sandra, keep your sat phone on you at all times. If you need to call me, day or night. I'll answer. Thank you. She hung up. I sat with the phone in my hand and stared at nothing. I thought about calling Garrett, about demanding they extract her immediately. But I knew how that would go. Weather delays, protocol, risk assessment. They'd tell me she was fine. They'd tell me to wait. By the time they sent someone, it might be too late. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept checking my phone, waiting for it to ring. At 0113 Mountain Time, which was 0013 Alaska time, I sat up in bed. 1 hour until the radio would turn on at Point Lonely. I thought about Sandra sitting alone in that small building, waiting, listening, knowing that in 60 minutes the click would come. At 0213 Mountain Time, my phone rang. Sandra. It happened again, she said. Her voice shook. But it was different. Tell me. The radio turned on at U1113. The voice came through. It said, Sandra, we see you. Then the lights came. What lights? Blue spheres, 3 of them, 1 at each circle. They rose up from the snow and hovered about 10 feet off the ground. They're still there. I can see them from the window. Are they moving? No. They're just sitting there, glowing. The light is so bright, it's making shadows inside the station. I got out of bed and paced. Don't go outside? I won't. Do you have the snowmobile keys? Yes, in my pocket. Good. If those spheres move toward the building, you run. Get to the snowmobile and go. Don't look back. We stayed on the phone. She described what she was seeing. The 3 blue spheres holding position. The way the light reflected off the snow and made the whole area glow. The way the temperature inside the station had dropped even though the heater was running. Her breath was visible. Frost formed on the inside of the windows. "Nora, there's something else." "What?" "The computer monitors are showing interference. The screens are flickering, and the data readings are wrong. The temperature sensors outside are showing 400 degrees Fahrenheit. That's not possible." It was possible. The antenna had melted. The metal had reached temperatures that shouldn't exist in the Arctic night. Whatever was generating the spheres was putting out heat. Enormous heat. But somehow the snow wasn't melting. The air wasn't warming. The heat was focused, controlled, directed only at specific things. "Sandra, I think you should leave now. They're between me and the fuel shed. I'd have to pass them to get to the snowmobile. Then wait, stay inside. Keep the door locked. Keep me on the phone." We waited together. Minutes passed. The spheres didn't move. Sandra's breathing was fast and shallow. I could hear the fear in it. I felt helpless. She was alone on the tundra, surrounded by lights that defied explanation, and I was 1,000 miles away in Montana with nothing but a phone connection. At 0247, Sandra gasped. "They're moving." "Toward the building?" "No, toward each other. They're converging at the center of the triangle." I heard the fear spike in her voice. "What's happening?" "They're merging. The three spheres are coming together. They're forming something. Oh God, Nora, it's huge." "Describe it." "It's not a sphere anymore, it's a column, vertical, maybe 30 feet tall. The light is white now, brighter than before. I can't look at it directly." "Is it moving?" "No, it's just standing there. In the center of the triangle, right in front of the station." My mind raced. The column, the wall we'd seen on our escape. This was how it started. The spheres merged and became something larger. Something that could manipulate space, that could create barriers, that could make distance meaningless. "Sandra, you need to get out, now. Go out the back. Circle wide around the column. Get to the fuel shed. Get the snowmobile and go." "What if it follows me?" "It will, but you'll be moving. You'll have a chance. If you stay there, you're trapped." She didn't answer right away. I could hear her breathing hard, making the decision. Then, "Okay, I'm going. Keep me on the line." I heard movement, the scrape of a chair, the rustle of her parka, the sound of a zipper. Her breathing was loud in the phone's microphone. Then the creak of the door opening. Wind rushed in. The connection crackled. "I'm outside," she whispered. "Keep moving. Don't look at the column. It's so bright. I can see everything. The whole tundra is lit up like daylight. Focus on the fuel shed. Get to the snowmobile." I heard her footsteps crunching in snow. Fast, uneven. She was running. The wind noise increased. She was breathing hard. Then she stopped. "Nora, it's turning." "What?" "The column. It's rotating, following me. Keep moving." "It's not just following, it's bending. The top is tilting toward me, like it's looking at me." My stomach clenched. "Sandra, run!" The phone filled with wind noise and her gasping breaths. I heard her stumble, a grunt, then more running. After what felt like an eternity, I heard a new sound. The rattle of a padlock, the creak of a shed door. "I'm at the shed," she panted. "Start the snowmobile." I heard fumbling, the jingle of keys, then the pull of a starter cord, once, twice. The engine didn't catch. Sandra swore. She pulled again. This time, the engine roared to life. "I've got it," she said. "I'm going. Head southeast, straight to Dead Horse. Don't stop." The engine noise grew louder. She was accelerating. I heard the wind rushing past the phone. She was moving fast. Too fast for safety, but safety didn't matter now. Distance mattered. Getting away mattered. "The column is still there," she shouted over the engine. "But it's not following. It's just standing in the center of the triangle. Keep going. Don't look back." For 20 minutes, I stayed on the line with her. She didn't talk much. Just the occasional update. 5 miles out. 10 miles. The column was behind her now. A bright point in the darkness. Getting smaller. At 15 miles, it blinked out. She was clear. "I think I'm okay," she said. Her voice was hoarse. "Keep going. All the way to Dead Horse. Call me when you get there." "Okay." She hung up. I sat on my bed in the dark and waited. 2 hours later, my phone rang. "I made it," Sandra said. "I'm at Dead Horse. They're getting me on a flight out this morning." "Good. Nora, I'm never going back there, never." "I know. Neither am I." After she hung up, I called Garrett. I told him what happened, everything. The radio calling Sandra by name, the 3 circles, the spheres merging into a column, her escape. He listened without interrupting. "We'll send a team," he said when I finished. "Don't send anyone alone," I said. "If you send people back to that station, send them in pairs, at minimum." "Understood." A week later, Garrett called with an update. The team had reached Point Lonely. The station was intact. The antenna was melted. The 3 circles were still visible in the snow, though partially filled in by wind. They found no other evidence. No column, no spheres, no tripod. The radio functioned normally during their 3-day stay. It never turned on by itself. No voices, no transmissions. "What does that mean?" I asked. "It means whatever was there is gone now, or dormant, or waiting." "Are you keeping the station operational?" "For now, but we're implementing new protocols. No solo rotations, minimum 2-person teams, mandatory daily check-ins, emergency extraction protocols, and we're installing additional monitoring equipment." "Will it help?" "I don't know, but we have to try." I took a transfer to a station in Montana. Lower elevation, warmer climate, no tundra, no endless horizons. Just mountains and forests and sky that felt smaller. Safer. I still do weather monitoring. I still collect data and send reports. But I don't work in the Arctic anymore. Calvin moved to Seattle. He got a job with a tech company doing remote systems maintenance. We still exchange messages a few times a year, usually just to check in. "How are you?" "I'm good. How's the weather?" "Normal." We don't talk about Point Lonely. We don't have to. We both know what happened. We both know it was real. Sometimes at night, I wake up at 01:13. I don't know why. My body just knows the time. I lie in bed and listen to the silence. I listen for the click of a radio turning on, for the hiss of static, for a voice that says we are not cold. It never comes. But I'm still listening. I think about what the voice said. The sky is open. You are seen. I think about the wall of light and the way it pulsed like something breathing. I think about the tripod and the device that tracked us. I think about the way distance didn't work right and time didn't work right, and the GPS showed we were barely moving even though we'd been riding for over an hour. I think about the reports Dale mentioned. People seeing lights on the tundra, equipment acting up, strange sounds. How many others have seen what we saw? How many kept it to themselves because they didn't want to sound crazy? I don't have answers. I don't have proof beyond the melted antenna and the corrupted audio files. I don't have a theory that fits. All I have is the memory of standing in a small research station on the tundra and watching a blue light sweep across the snow. All I have is the feeling of passing through a wall of white light and feeling weightless. Disconnected. like I'd crossed from one space into another. I'm writing this down because I think people should know. Not as a warning, exactly. Not as evidence. Just as a record. If you work in remote places, watch for things that don't fit. If equipment starts behaving strangely, pay attention. If lights appear where they shouldn't, be cautious. And if a voice on the radio tells you that you are seen, consider what that means. I don't work at Point Lonely anymore. The station is still operational. They rotate crews through every few months. The antenna was replaced. The radio functions normally during the day. I don't know what happens at night. I don't know if the voices still come through at 0113. I don't know if the blue light still sweeps across the snow, or if the wall still rises on the southeast horizon. I could find out. I could call Garrett and ask for an update. I could reach out to Sandra and see if she's still there. I could request the maintenance logs and see if there are new reports of anomalies. But I won't, because some questions are better left unanswered. Some doors are better left closed. What I know is this. Something exists on the north slope that we don't understand. It uses light. It manipulates space and time. It communicates through radios even when they're turned off. And it sees us. It knows we're there. Whether it's a machine or something else, whether it's been there for years or just arrived, whether it's observing us or studying us or something else entirely, I don't know. What I do know is that the voice was right. We are not cold. Whatever it is, it doesn't experience temperature the way we do. It exists in a space where cold doesn't matter, where distance is negotiable, where the sky opens and things move through it. And it told us. The sky is open. I think about that phrase more than any other. Open to what? Open for what? Is it a door? A passage? A boundary that's been crossed? I don't have answers. I just know that on January 27th, something reached out and touched a research station on the tundra. It melted an antenna with heat that left no trace. It turned on a radio at 0113 and spoke 4 words. It showed us lights and walls and a tripod with a device that watched us pass. And then it let us go. That's the part that keeps me up at night. Not that it happened, not that we saw it, but that it let us go. It had us. It controlled the space around us. It could have stopped us from leaving. It could have brought us back. But it didn't. It let us ride through the wall. It let us reach Dead Horse. It let us fly to Anchorage and go home. Why? I don't know. Maybe we weren't important. Maybe we were just in the way. Maybe it was finished with whatever it was doing and we happened to be there. Or maybe it wanted us to leave. Maybe it wanted us to tell the story. Maybe it wanted people to know that the sky is open. If you ever find yourself at Point Lonely Station, be careful. Watch the radio. Listen at 0113. If it turns on, pay attention to what it says. If you see lights, document them, but don't approach. If the wall appears, you can pass through it. We did. But know that once you do, you've crossed something. You've been seen. And whatever's on the other side knows you were there. I don't work in the Arctic anymore. I don't plan to go back. But sometimes I look north and wonder what's happening out there on the tundra. Whether the lights still come, whether the voices still speak, whether the sky is still open. And I wonder if anyone else is listening. I'm a paramedic with the Alaska State Troopers Remote Emergency Response Team. For the past 9 years, I've worked rotations in the interior and North Slope, responding to medical emergencies in areas where the nearest hospital can be 200 miles away. Most of my calls are routine: hunting accidents, heart attacks, hypothermia. You stabilize the patient, load them into a plane or helicopter, and get them to Fairbanks or Anchorage. The work is straightforward if you stay calm and follow protocol. My name is Isla Turner. I'm 37. I grew up in rural Maine, so isolation doesn't bother me. I'm good in emergencies. I don't panic. I assess, act, and adapt. Those qualities have kept people alive in situations where minutes matter and help is hours away. But nothing in my training prepared me for what happened on February 8th near the Colville River Delta. I was stationed in Deadhorse that week, covering for another medic who'd gone south for family leave. My partner was Jake Morrison, a wilderness EMT who'd been working the North Slope for 6 years. Jake is 42, quiet, competent, and built like someone who splits firewood for fun. He grew up in Montana and moved to Alaska after his divorce. We'd worked together before. He's reliable. That matters when you're 80 miles from the nearest backup. The call came in at 16:47 on February 8th. A construction crew working on pipeline maintenance near Umiat reported a worker with chest pain and shortness of breath. Possible cardiac event. The foreman said the man was stable but needed transport. Standard medevac. We loaded the trauma kit, oxygen, and cardiac monitoring equipment into our tracked vehicle and departed Deadhorse at 17:12. The vehicle was a Tucker Snowcat, an old but reliable machine built for Arctic conditions. Heavy, slow, but it could punch through deep snow and climb grades that would bog down a snowmobile. Jake drove. I handled navigation and radio. The sky was already dark. That time of year, you get maybe 3 hours of weak daylight, and we'd missed it. Temperature was minus 34 Fahrenheit with winds at 12 knots. Manageable. The route took us southwest on a service road that paralleled the pipeline, then south along a winter trail that cut through low hills and frozen drainages. The forecast showed clear skies with light wind. No storms, no whiteouts. We expected to reach the crew camp in about 3 hours, treat the patient, and either stabilize him on site or transport him back to Deadhorse for airlift. 40 minutes into the drive, the aurora appeared. Green curtains stretched across the northern sky, rippling slowly. Beautiful and normal. Jake glanced up through the windshield and nodded. We'd both seen the aurora hundreds of times. It was part of working up here. The lights danced and shifted, sometimes bright enough to read by, sometimes dim. They followed the magnetic fields and responded to solar activity. Predictable. Natural. At 18:23, the radio crackled. The foreman at the crew camp. His voice was tight. Deadhorse response. This is Umiat camp. Our guy's getting worse. Heart rate's climbing. He's in pain. How far out are you? I checked the GPS. Umiat camp, we're approximately 40 miles out. ETA 1 hour 40 minutes. Copy. Please advise if you can move faster. Jake pushed the throttle forward. The Snowcat's engine growled and we picked up speed. Not much. Maybe an extra 5 miles per hour. But every minute counted when someone's heart was failing. At 18:51, the aurora intensified. The green bands brightened and began to pulse. Fast. Faster than I'd ever seen. The light strobed across the snow like a slow-motion strobe. Jake slowed the vehicle and leaned forward, staring through the windshield. That's not normal, he said. I know. The pulsing quickened. The bands split into dozens of thin ribbons that twisted and braided together. The sky looked alive. And then, without warning, a column of light dropped from directly above us. Not green. White, solid. It hit the snow maybe 100 yards ahead and spread into a circle that covered the ground like a spotlight. The light was so bright I had to squint. Jake slammed the brakes and the Snowcat skidded to a stop. "What the hell is that?" he said. I didn't answer. I couldn't. I was staring at the column. It was perfectly vertical, sharp-edged, no diffusion, no scatter. Light doesn't behave that way. It spreads, it fades at the edges. This didn't. It looked like a cylinder of solid white dropped from the sky and anchored to the ground. The column held for maybe 5 seconds. Then it snapped off. 1 second there, the next second gone. The circle of light on the snow faded. The aurora returned to its normal slow ripple. The sky was just sky again. Jake and I sat in the cab and stared at the spot where the light had been. The snow looked undisturbed. No glow, no heat shimmer, no sign that anything had happened. "Aurora effect?" Jake asked. His voice was uncertain. "I've never seen the aurora do that," I said. "Me neither." We sat in silence. The engine idled. The heater blew warm air into the cab. Outside, the tundra stretched flat and empty in every direction. No structures, no lights, no movement. Just frozen ground and stars. I grabbed the radio mic. "Umi at camp, this is Dead Horse Response. Did you observe any unusual atmospheric activity in the last few minutes?" Static, then the foreman's voice. "Negative. Sky's clear here. Why?" "Just checking. We're continuing inbound." Jake shifted into gear and we rolled forward. The tracks crunched over the snow. We passed the spot where the column had hit. I looked out the window. The snow was smooth. Flat. No marks. No disturbance. As if nothing had touched it. At 1917, the GPS started acting up. The position jumped. We were on course 1 second, then the screen showed us 3 miles east. Then back on course, then 5 miles west. The altitude reading cycled between 200 feet and 400 feet. None of it made sense. We were on flat ground. The tundra doesn't have those kinds of elevation changes. "Is your GPS working?" I asked Jake. He tapped the unit mounted to the dash. "No, it's jumping all over." I checked the backup handheld. Same problem. The position was unstable. The map reloaded constantly. I couldn't get a reliable fix. "Dead reckoning," Jake said. "We stay on the trail and follow the compass." He was right. The trail was visible. 2 parallel tracks pressed into the snow from previous vehicles. We could follow them even without GPS. I checked the magnetic compass mounted to the dash. It showed south-southwest. That was correct. We kept moving. At 1934, Jake slowed again. I looked up from the map. Ahead of us, the trail split. 2 sets of tracks diverged. One continued straight. The other veered left toward a low rise. "Which way?" Jake asked. I studied the map. There shouldn't be a split here. The trail was a single route, but the tracks were clear. 2 options. I checked the compass. Straight ahead was south-southwest, left was west. "Straight," I said. "Stay on course." Jake nodded and took the straight route. The snowcat's headlights cut through the darkness. The beams reflected off the snow and made everything beyond them look black. I kept my eyes on the tracks ahead, watching for anything unusual. At 1947, we lost the tracks. They just stopped. 1 second, we were following clear parallel lines in the snow. The next second, they ended. Not faded, not buried by wind. Ended. Like the vehicle that made them had lifted off the ground. Jake stopped the snowcat. We climbed out into the cold. The wind had died completely. It was still. Too still. I walked forward with a flashlight and examined the tracks. They were pressed deep into the snow. Heavy vehicle. Recent. And then nothing. The snow ahead was smooth and undisturbed. "This doesn't make sense," Jake said. I crouched and studied the end of the tracks. The pattern was clean, no drag marks, no signs of turning. The tracks just terminated in a straight line as if the vehicle had been erased. "Could they have turned around?" I asked. "Not without leaving marks," Jake said. "You can't turn a snowcat on a dime. You'd see the tracks curve." I stood and scanned the area with my flashlight. The beam reached maybe 50 yards before dissolving into darkness. No vehicle, no lights, no movement, just empty tundra. "We keep going," I said. "Stay on course by compass. We'll find the trail again." We climbed back into the cab. Jake shifted into gear and we rolled forward, breaking fresh snow. The GPS was still unstable. The radio was silent. No chatter from other crews, no weather updates, just static when we keyed the mic. At 2008, I saw something ahead, a shape on the snow, dark, low. I pointed. "Jake, 12 o'clock, something's there." He slowed and aimed the headlights. The shape resolved into a vehicle, a snowcat, smaller than ours, painted red. It sat motionless on the snow with its engine off and its lights dark. We stopped 20 feet away. I grabbed the radio. "Unidentified vehicle ahead. This is Alaska State Troopers Medical Response. Do you need assistance?" No response. Jake and I looked at each other. He killed our engine and we stepped out. The cold wrapped around me immediately. I pulled my parka hood up and walked toward the red snowcat. Jake followed with a flashlight. The vehicle was a Bombardier, an older model used by hunting guides and remote camps. The tracks it had made led straight to where it sat. No sign of turning. No sign of stopping gradually. It was just there, planted in the snow, like someone had set it down from above. I approached the cab and shone my flashlight through the driver's side window. Empty. No one inside. I tried the door. Unlocked. I pulled it open and the dome light flickered on. The cab was cold but not frozen. The keys sat in the ignition. I turned them. The engine cranked but didn't start. Fuel gauge showed half a tank. "Hyla," Jake called. He was standing behind the vehicle, looking down. I walked over. His flashlight pointed at the snow. Footprints, 2 sets, leading away from the vehicle toward the southeast. Deep prints. Someone walking in heavy boots. The tracks were clear and fresh. "How long ago?" I asked. Jake crouched and examined the edges of the prints. "Hard to say. Could be an hour, could be 3. The wind's been calm, so they haven't filled in." I followed the trail of prints with my flashlight. They led straight across the tundra toward a low ridge about a 1/4 mile away. Beyond that, nothing but darkness. "We follow them," I said. "What about our call? The guy at Umiat camp?" I checked my watch. 2014. We were supposed to arrive by 2030. We were off course and had lost the trail. If we deviated further to follow these prints, we'd miss our window. But someone had abandoned this vehicle and walked into the Arctic night. That wasn't something you did unless you were in trouble. I grabbed the radio from our snowcat and tried to raise Umiat camp. Static. I tried Dead Horse. Static. The radio was dead. No carrier wave, no traffic, nothing. "Radio's out," I said. "We can't call for backup, we can't confirm our position, and someone's out here on foot." Jake nodded. He understood. We were trained for this. When you find someone in distress, you don't leave them, you assess and act. We geared up. Heavy parkas, insulated pants, boots, gloves, headlamps, emergency packs with food, water, and a bivouac shelter. I strapped the trauma kit to my back. Jake carried a backpack with additional supplies and a flare gun. We locked our snowcat and started walking. The prints were easy to follow. The snow was firm and the tracks were deep. Whoever made them was heavy or carrying weight. We moved steadily, not fast. In the Arctic night, rushing is how you twist an ankle or fall into a hidden drainage. You move with care. The aurora pulsed above us, brighter than before. The green light reflected off the snow and gave everything a faint glow. It was beautiful and eerie at the same time. I kept my eyes on the prints, 1 foot in front of the other. Don't think about the cold. Don't think about the silence. Just follow the tracks. At 2037, we reached the ridge. The prince climbed the slope and disappeared over the crest. Jake and I stopped and caught our breath. The cold air burned in my lungs. I could feel sweat freezing on my back under the parka. "You ready?" Jake asked. Yeah, we climbed. The snow was deeper on the slope and our boots sank with each step. By the time we crested the ridge, my thighs were burning. I stopped and scanned the area below with my headlamp. The land dropped into a shallow bowl maybe 100 yards across. Flat bottom, low sides, and in the center, standing alone on the snow, was a figure. I felt my heart jump. Jake. He saw it. We stood on the ridge and stared. The figure was motionless, humanoid shape, arms at its sides, facing away from us. It wore what looked like a dark parka, but something about the proportions was wrong. The arms hung too low. The head was too large. "Hello!" Jake shouted. His voice carried across the bowl and echoed faintly. "Do you need help?" The figure didn't move, didn't turn, just stood there. Jake and I looked at each other. "Could be hypothermic," I said. "Altered mental status. We need to approach carefully." We descended into the bowl. The prince led straight to the figure. As we got closer, I could see more detail. The parka was black. No reflective strips, no patches. The figure's posture was rigid, too rigid, like it was locked in place. At 20 yards, I stopped. "Sir, ma'am, we're with Alaska State Troopers Medical Response. We're here to help." No response. The figure stood like a statue. Jake moved to my left, circling slightly to get a better angle. "Can you hear me?" Still nothing. I took another step forward, 15 yards now. My headlamp beam hit the figure square on, and I saw it clearly. It wasn't a person. The shape was wrong. The proportions were off. The arms were too thin. The legs were too straight. And the head, which I'd thought was large, wasn't a head at all. It was a smooth dome, featureless. No face, no hair, no openings. I stopped, my breath caught. Jake saw it too. He raised his flashlight and the beam illuminated the figure fully. It was a suit, or something like a suit. Black material that looked seamless. No zippers, no seams, no boots or gloves. Just one continuous piece that covered a frame that didn't have human proportions. The arms ended in points. No hands. The legs were straight cylinders, no feet. And the dome where a head should be was smooth and reflective like polished metal. "What is that?" Jake whispered. "I don't know." The suit stood motionless on the snow. Behind it, pressed into the snow, were the same footprints we'd been following. They led right up to where the suit stood, and then they stopped. No prints leading away. No sign that whoever wore the suit had removed it. The tracks just ended at the suit. I circled around to the front. The dome reflected my headlamp beam. I could see my own distorted reflection in the surface. No face underneath. No person. Just emptiness. "Isla, look at the snow," Jake said. I stepped back and looked down. The suit stood on the surface of the snow, but it wasn't sinking. My boots were ankle deep. Jake's were the same. The suit's legs touched the snow but left no impression. No weight. Like it was hollow. Jake reached out slowly and touched the suit's arm with a gloved finger. The material didn't move. It was rigid. He pressed harder. Still rigid. He rapped his knuckle against it. The sound was dull, solid. "It's not fabric," he said. "Feels like metal or plastic, something hard." I crouched and examined where the suit met the snow. There was a faint discoloration, a ring of darker snow about 2 feet in diameter around the base of the suit. I pulled off my glove and touched the snow. It was warm. "Jake, the snow's warm." He crouched beside me and felt it. That's not possible. But it was. The snow was warmer than the surrounding area. Not melting, just warm. I stood and backed away. My mind raced. Someone had walked out here in heavy boots. The tracks led to this suit. And then the tracks stopped. The suit stood here, and the snow beneath it was warm. "We need to call this in," I said. Jake nodded. He pulled the radio from his pack and tried to raise Dead Horse. Static. He tried Umi at camp. Static. He cycled through every frequency. Nothing. The radio was dead. I looked around the bowl. The ridges surrounded us on all sides. The aurora pulsed overhead, and in the center, the black suit stood like a monument. Silent, still, waiting. "We should go," I said, "back to the snowcat. Get to Umi at camp. Report this." Agreed. We backed away from the suit, keeping our lights on it. It didn't move. We climbed out of the bowl and reached the ridge. I looked back one more time. The suit was still there, a dark shape against the white snow. And above it, the aurora had split into 3 distinct bands, all of them directly overhead. All of them pulsing in unison. We turned and started back toward our vehicle. The tracks we'd made coming in were clear. We followed them quickly, not running, but moving with purpose. The cold bit at my face. My legs ached. I wanted to be back in the snowcat. I wanted the radio to work. I wanted to be anywhere but here. At 2199, we saw lights ahead. Not our snowcat. Different lights. Blue. Hovering above the snow. Jake and I stopped. The lights were maybe 200 yards away, positioned between us and where we'd left the vehicles. 3 spheres, each one about the size of a beach ball. They floated motionless about 10 feet off the ground and cast long shadows across the snow. "Not again," Jake muttered. The spheres began to move. Slowly, at first. They circled each other, forming a triangle. Then they separated and spread out in a line. They stayed low, just above the snow, and moved with precision. Deliberate. Controlled. "What do we do?" I asked. Jake didn't answer. He was watching the spheres. They stopped moving and hovered in formation. Then, one by one, they began to descend. They touched the snow and sank into it. Not melting through. Just sinking. Like the snow was water. Within seconds, they were gone. The tundra was dark again. We stood in silence. My heart hammered in my chest. I forced myself to breathe slowly. In, out, in, out. "We keep moving," Jake said. "Stay alert." We walked forward. The tracks we'd made were still there. We followed them back toward the vehicles. At 2134, we crested a small rise and saw our snowcat ahead. The red bombardier was still beside it. Both vehicles sat dark and empty under the stars. We reached the snowcat and climbed into the cab. I pulled the door shut and locked it. Jake started the engine. It turned over immediately and the heater kicked on. The warm air felt like salvation. "Let's go," I said. Jake shifted into gear and we rolled forward. He turned us south-southwest, following the compass. The headlights cut through the darkness. I kept my eyes on the snow ahead, watching for tracks, for spheres, for anything that didn't belong. At 2147, the radio crackled. Static at first. Then a voice, male, calm, emotionless. "Turn back," I grabbed the mic. "Who is this?" "Turn back. You are not cleared." "This is Alaska State Troopers Medical Response. We have an emergency call. We need to proceed." The voice didn't respond. Just static. Then it came again. "Turn back. You are not cleared." Jake glanced at me. "What do we do?" I thought about the worker at Umiat camp. Heart attack. Waiting for us. We were already late. If we turned back now, he might die. But the voice on the radio was giving us a direct order. Or a warning. "We keep going," I said. Jake nodded. He pushed the throttle forward, and we accelerated. The snowcat's tracks bit into the snow, and we picked up speed. At 21:52, a column of white light dropped from the sky directly ahead of us. Just like before. Solid. Vertical. Bright enough to hurt. It hit the snow maybe 50 yards in front of the snowcat and spread into a perfect circle. Jake hit the brakes. We skidded and stopped. The column held. And then, from within the light, something emerged. The shape that came out of the light was hard to see clearly. Not because it was dim, because it didn't hold still. It shifted, changed. 1 second it looked like a person standing upright. The next second it was wider, lower, like something on 4 legs. My eyes couldn't lock onto it. The outline kept slipping. Jake put the snowcat in reverse. "We're getting out of here." He twisted the wheel and we started backing up. The shape moved toward us. Not walking, gliding. It closed the distance fast, too fast. Jake shifted into forward and cranked the wheel hard, turning us 90 degrees. The track spun and we lurched to the side. The column of light snapped off. The shape stopped. The tundra went dark again except for our headlights. I scanned the area, nothing. The shape was gone. "Where did it go?" Jake asked. "I don't know." We sat in the idling snowcat and waited. The engine rumbled. The heater blew. Outside, the snow was empty. The aurora rippled overhead in slow green waves. Normal. Beautiful. Like nothing had happened. "Do you think it's gone?" Jake asked. "I don't know," I said. "But we need to move. Pick a direction and go." Jake chose east. Away from the column. Away from the suit. Away from whatever had emerged from the light. He opened the throttle and we accelerated across the tundra. The compass spun. The GPS was still dead. We were navigating blind, putting distance between us and what we'd seen. At 22:08, we crested a low rise and saw lights in the distance. Yellow, steady, artificial. A camp. Jake aimed for it. The lights grew brighter as we approached. Shapes resolved into structures. Prefab buildings, generators, vehicles, a work camp. Jake brought us to the edge of the camp and stopped. A man in a heavy parka stepped out of a building and walked toward us. He wore a headlamp and carried a radio. When he got close, he knocked on the window. Jake rolled it down. "You guys lost?" the man asked. "We're Alaska State Troopers Medical Response," I said. "We were en route to Umiat camp. We got off course." The man frowned. "Umiat's 40 miles west. You're way off." "We know." "GPS failed. Can we use your radio?" "Sure. Come inside." We climbed out and followed him into a small operations building. Warm air and the smell of coffee hit me as we stepped through the door. 2 other men sat at a table with maps spread out. They looked up as we entered. "These folks got turned around," the first man said. "Need to call in." He handed me a satellite phone. I dialed Dead Horse Operations and waited. It rang twice before someone picked up. "Dead Horse Ops. This is Isla Turner, Medical Response. We got off course en route to Umiat camp. We're at a work site approximately 40 miles east of our intended route. Can you confirm position?" There was a pause. Typing. "We don't have a work site logged in that area. Can you give me a landmark?" I looked at the man who'd greeted us. "What's this site called?" "Well, Site 7, he said. "Pipeline survey crew." I relayed that to Dead Horse. Another pause. "Negative, Isla." Well Site 7 is logged 30 miles southeast of Dead Horse. You shouldn't be anywhere near there if you were heading to Umiat. I felt my stomach tighten. Can you confirm our GPS coordinates? Stand by. I waited. The men at the table watched me. Jake stood by the door with his arms crossed. After a minute, Dead Horse came back. Isla, the sat phone you're using is pinging from 70.2 north, 152.1 west. That puts you about 60 miles east of your last known position. How did you get that far off course? I don't know. Equipment failure. Visibility issues. Copy. What's your status on the Umiat call? I checked my watch. 22:16. We were supposed to arrive over an hour ago. We're unable to continue. We need to return to Dead Horse. Understood. We'll dispatch another team to Umiat. You head back. Use the sat phone for nav if your GPS is down. Copy. I hung up and looked at Jake. They're sending another team. We're going back. He nodded. We thanked the survey crew and walked back to the snowcat. As I climbed into the cab, I glanced at the sky. The aurora was fading. The green bands thinned and the stars became brighter. It looked normal again, like the light show was over. Jake started the engine and pulled up the GPS coordinates on the sat phone. He punched them into the dash unit for reference and plotted a course northwest back to Dead Horse. The route was straightforward. 70 miles. 3 hours if we maintained speed. We drove in silence. I kept replaying what we'd seen. The abandoned red snowcat. The tracks that ended at a black suit standing on warm snow. The spheres sinking into the tundra. The column of light and the shape that emerged from it. None of it made sense. None of it fit any framework I had for understanding the world. You think anyone will believe us? Jake asked. I don't know. We should write it down, everything, while it's fresh. Agreed. At 23:34, the radio crackled. Not the snowcat's radio, the handheld I'd clipped to my belt. I pulled it out and looked at the screen. The unit was on. The frequency showed a channel I didn't recognize. Static hissed from the speaker. Isla Turner. My name. Clear. Unmistakable. I keyed the mic. Who is this? Isla Turner. Jake Morrison. You are seen. The same phrase from Point Lonely. The same flat tone. I felt cold spread through my chest. Jake glanced at me. Turn it off, he said. I reached for the power button. Before I could press it, the voice came again. You found the vessel. You touched the boundary. You are marked. The radio went dead. No static, no carrier wave. Just silence. I turned the unit off and shoved it into my pack. What did it mean, marked? Jake asked. I don't know. We kept driving. The headlights cut through the darkness. The tundra stretched flat and empty. At 0012, I saw something ahead. A shape on the snow. Dark. Familiar. Jake, stop. He hit the brakes. We sat and stared. The red Bombardier, the same vehicle we'd found hours ago. It sat in the exact same position. Alone on the tundra. Empty. That's not possible, Jake said. We drove east. We're 70 miles from where we found that thing. I know. He pulled up the GPS log on the sat phone. It showed our route. A clear line from Well Site 7 northwest toward Dead Horse. We were nowhere near where we'd encountered the red snowcat the first time. It's following us, I said. Jake stared at the vehicle. How? I don't know. He shifted into gear and drove around it, giving it a wide berth. As we passed, I looked out the window. The cab was dark, empty. The keys sat in the ignition. Exactly as before. And behind the vehicle, pressed into the snow, were the same footprints leading southeast toward the ridge where we'd found the suit. We didn't stop. We kept moving. Jake pushed the snowcat as fast as it would go. The engine roared. The tracks kicked up snow behind us. I kept my eyes forward and tried not to think about the red vehicle sitting alone in our wake. At 00047, the GPS started working again. The position stabilized. The altitude reading made sense. We were 43 miles southeast of Dead Horse on a direct line. Jake adjusted course slightly to follow the plotted route. The sat phone showed we'd be back by 0230. "Almost there," he said. I nodded. I didn't trust it. Not yet. Not until we were inside the operations building with other people around us and doors that locked. At 01:18, the sky lit up. Not the aurora. White light. Everywhere. It came from above and below at the same time, like the tundra and the sky had switched places. I couldn't see the horizon. Couldn't see the ground. Just light. Pure and total. Jake slammed the brakes. The snowcat skidded and stopped. We sat in the cab and the light pressed against the windows. I raised my hand in front of my face and couldn't see it. The light was too bright. "Jake, I'm here." The light held for maybe 5 seconds. Then it faded, not gradually, all at once, like someone flipped a switch. The tundra returned, dark, flat, stars overhead, the headlights cutting through the night. We sat in silence. My heart hammered, my hand shook. Jake's face was pale in the dashboard glow. "What was that?" he asked. "I don't know." He shifted into gear and we moved forward. Slower this time, cautious. At 0134, we saw lights ahead. Dead Horse. The oil facility glowed on the horizon like a small city. Yellow floodlights, buildings, towers. Civilization. Jake aimed for it. We covered the last 20 miles in 40 minutes and pulled into the operations yard at 0244. He killed the engine. We sat in the cab and stared at the buildings around us. People walked between structures. Trucks idled. Generators hummed. Everything looked normal. "We made it," Jake said. "Yeah." We climbed out and walked into the operations building. The heat inside felt overwhelming after hours in the cold. I pulled off my parka and hung it on a hook by the door. A supervisor named Marcus saw us and walked over. "You two okay?" he asked. "Heard you got turned around." "We're fine," I said. "Equipment failure. We need to file a report." "Sure, grab some coffee. I'll get the forms." Jake and I sat at a table with coffee mugs and blank incident forms. I stared at the paper. "How do you write this?" "We found an abandoned vehicle. We followed tracks to a black suit standing on warm snow. We saw spheres sink into the tundra. A voice on the radio said we were marked. A column of light dropped a shape that couldn't hold still. I picked up the pen. I wrote the basics. Times, locations, equipment failure, lost GPS, radio malfunction. I mentioned the abandoned red snowcat. I mentioned following footprints. I didn't mention the suit. I didn't mention the spheres. I didn't mention the light. I kept it vague. Anomalies, environmental conditions, need for further investigation. Jake did the same. We signed the forms and handed them to Marcus. He read them and frowned. "You saw an abandoned vehicle?" "Yes, a red bombardier, southeast of Umiat." "Did you get coordinates?" "No, GPS was down." Marcus made a note. "We'll send someone to look for it. Anything else?" I hesitated. Jake shook his head slightly. "A warning. Don't say more. Don't sound crazy." "No," I said. "That's it." Marcus filed the forms and told us to get some rest. We walked to the crew quarters and found empty bunks. I lay down fully clothed and stared at the ceiling. Sleep didn't come. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the black suit. The smooth dome, the arms that ended in points. At 0620, my phone rang. Marcus. Isla, can you come to Ops? What's wrong? Just come. I got up and walked to the operations building. Marcus was at his desk with a map spread out. He pointed to a marked location. We sent a team to look for that bombardier. They found it. Where? Right where you said, southeast of Umiat. But here's the thing. He tapped the map. The vehicle is registered to a hunting guide out of Fairbanks. Guy named Thomas Novak. He reported it stolen 3 days ago. Stolen? Yeah, taken from a staging area near Wiseman, 200 miles south of where you found it. I stared at the map. 200 miles. How does a stolen vehicle end up that far north in 3 days? And who drives it into the middle of nowhere and walks away? Did the team find any sign of the driver? I asked. Marcus shook his head. No tracks, no footprints, nothing. Just the vehicle sitting there. That was impossible. Jake and I had seen the footprints. 2 sets, clear, deep, leading away from the bombardier toward the ridge. They couldn't have vanished. What about the tracks leading away from the vehicle? I asked. Marcus looked at me. What tracks? The footprints, 2 sets, leading southeast from the vehicle. He checked his notes. The team didn't report any footprints. They said the snow around the vehicle was undisturbed. I felt my chest tighten. Jake and I had followed those tracks. We'd walked in them. They were real. They led us to the suit. That's not possible, I said. Marcus shrugged. That's what they reported. Maybe the wind filled them in. The wind was calm. He didn't have an answer. He made a note and moved on. Anyway, we're towing the bombardier back. The owner will pick it up. We'll file a report with the troopers about the theft. You're clear. I nodded and walked back to the crew quarters. Jake was awake, sitting on his bunk. They found the red snowcat, I said. No footprints. No sign of a driver. He stared at me. That's not possible. I know. We sat in silence. After a moment, Jake pulled out his phone and opened the photo gallery. I took pictures when we found the suit. I took 3 shots before we left. He scrolled through the photos. Landscapes, equipment, people. He kept scrolling, then he stopped. They're gone. What do you mean gone? The photos. I took them at 2045. There's a picture at 2041. Then nothing until 2153. The 3 photos are missing. I checked my phone. I'd taken pictures too. Same result. The time frame where we found the suit was blank. No photos, like we hadn't been there. Jake set his phone down. Someone erased them, or something. We spent the rest of the day at Dead Horse. We ate, we showered. We tried to act normal. But I couldn't shake the feeling that we'd crossed something. A line, a boundary, the voice on the radio had said it. You touched the boundary, you are marked. That evening, I stood outside the operations building and looked north. The tundra stretched flat and empty under a clear sky. No aurora. No lights. Just stars and frozen ground. Somewhere out there, the black suit stood in a bowl. The spheres waited beneath the snow. And something watched from places we couldn't see. At 1847, a helicopter arrived. The other medical team returning from Umiat camp. They'd treated the worker and stabilized him. He was en route to Anchorage. The team walked into operations and I caught the medic's attention. A woman named Sarah. How was the call? I asked. Straightforward, cardiac event. We got there in time. Any issues on the drive? She frowned. We flew. Helicopter. Why? I felt something cold settle in my stomach. We were dispatched by ground in a snowcat. No. Dispatch sent us by air. Said ground was too slow for a cardiac case. I pulled out my phone and checked the initial call log. 1647, request for ground transport. I showed it to Sarah. She pulled out her phone and showed me hers. 1652, request for air transport. That doesn't make sense, she said. Why would they dispatch two teams? I didn't have an answer, but I knew what it meant. Someone or something had sent us into the tundra. They'd given us a call that was already covered. They'd put us on a route that led to the red bombardier, to the tracks, to the suit. We were meant to find it. I requested a meeting with Marcus the next morning. He listened while I explained the discrepancy in the dispatch calls. He pulled up the logs on his computer and frowned. "This is strange," he said. I showed two separate calls logged. One at 1647 requesting ground transport. One at 1652 requesting air transport. Both from Umiat camp. "Can you contact the foreman, verify which one he actually made?" Marcus called. The conversation was short. He hung up and looked at me. He says he only called once, at 1652. He requested a helicopter because the patient was deteriorating fast. He never called for ground transport. Then where did the first call come from? Marcus checked the system logs. It shows as originating from Umiat camp's radio frequency, but the foreman says he didn't make it. I felt that cold weight again. Someone had made a false call. Someone had sent Jake and me into the tundra at the exact time the aurora intensified, at the exact time and place to encounter the red bombardier and the tracks and the suit. "Can you trace the call?" I asked. "I can try. Give me a few hours." I thanked him and left. Jake was in the mess hall with coffee. I sat down and told him what I'd learned. His face went pale. "We were lured out there," he said. "Looks that way." "By who?" "I don't know, but I don't think it was a person." We sat in silence. Around us, workers ate breakfast and talked about shifts and equipment and weather. Normal conversations, normal concerns. Nobody knew what we'd seen. Nobody would believe us if we told them. At 1100, Marcus called me back to operations. He had the call trace results on his screen. "The call at 1647 didn't come from Umiat camp," he said. "It originated from a location approximately 43 miles southeast of here. Middle of nowhere. No registered facilities, no radio towers, nothing." I looked at the map. The location was close to where we'd found the red bombardier, close to where we'd seen the suit. "Someone was out there," I said. "They used a radio to fake a call and get us dispatched. But why? I don't know." Marcus made notes and filed a report with the troopers. Suspicious activity, possible radio interference, possible false dispatch. He didn't mention the suit or the lights, neither did I. The report was clinical, factual, vague enough to be filed and forgotten. That afternoon, I got a call from the troopers in Fairbanks. A detective named Wallace. He was following up on the stolen bombardier. "Miss Turner, I understand you encountered the vehicle in question on February 8th. "That's correct." "Can you describe the condition of the vehicle when you found it?" "It was intact, parked on the tundra, keys in the ignition, no visible damage, no one inside. Did you see any indication of who had driven it there?" I hesitated. There were footprints leading away from the vehicle. "Can you describe them?" "Two sets, heavy boots, leading southeast." Wallace made notes. "Did you follow them?" "Yes. They led to a ridge about a quarter-mile away, then they stopped." "Stopped how?" "The tracks ended. No sign of where the person went." Another pause. "The recovery team reported no footprints around the vehicle. Can you explain that?" No, but I saw them. My partner Jake Morrison saw them. They were there. All right, anything else unusual? I thought about the suit, about the spheres, about the column of light. I thought about the voice on the radio saying we were marked. I kept my mouth shut. No, I said, that's all. Wallace thanked me and hung up. I sat with the phone in my hand and stared at nothing. They wouldn't find anything. The tracks were gone. The photos were gone. All we had were memories and a vague sense that we'd touched something we weren't supposed to. That evening, Jake and I sat in his room and went through everything again. We wrote down every detail we could remember. Times, locations, descriptions. We wanted a record, something concrete, something that proved we weren't making it up. Do you think it's connected to Point Lonely? Jake asked. I'd heard about Point Lonely, the meteorologist and the technician who'd fled after experiencing radio anomalies and lights. It had happened a few weeks before our encounter. Maybe, I said. Same area, same phenomena. Lights, radio interference, missing time. Missing time? The photos. The time frame where we found the suit. It's blank, like those minutes didn't exist. Jake nodded. What do you think it is? I don't know, but I think it's been here longer than we have. And I think it's watching the people who come through. We talked late into the night. Eventually, exhaustion took over and we went to our bunks. I slept poorly. I dreamed of the suit standing in the bowl. The smooth dome reflecting my face, the arms hanging too low. In the dream, the suit moved. It turned toward me. And when I looked into the reflective dome, I saw something looking back. Not my reflection. Something else. I woke at 03:20. My heart raced. I sat up and grabbed my phone. No messages, no calls. I checked the time. 03:20. Then I noticed something. My phone's photo gallery was open. I didn't remember opening it. I scrolled through the photos. The blank space from February 8th was still there. No pictures between 2:41 and 21:53. But now there was something else. A new photo. Time-stamped 319. 1 minute ago. I opened it. The image was dark, grainy, taken from above. It showed the tundra at night, and in the center of the frame, illuminated by what looked like a headlamp, were two figures, tiny, distant, walking across the snow. I zoomed in. The figures wore parkas. One was taller than the other. Jake and me. The photo showed us walking across the tundra the night of February 8th. But I hadn't taken this photo. The angle was wrong. It was taken from above, high above, like someone was watching from the sky. I grabbed my pack and pulled out the handheld radio. I turned it on. The screen glowed. The frequency showed a channel I didn't recognize. I keyed the mic. "Who are you?" Static. Then the voice, calm, flat, emotionless. "You are marked, Isla Turner. The boundary remains." "What boundary?" "The line you crossed, the vessel you touched, the space you entered." "What do you want?" No response, just static. Then the radio died. I turned it off and shoved it back into my pack. I sat on my bunk and tried to slow my breathing. Someone, or something, had been watching us. They'd taken photos from above. They'd sent them to my phone. They wanted me to know. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. At 0600, I showered and dressed and went to the mess hall. Jake was already there. He looked like he hadn't slept either. "I got a photo on my phone," he said. "Time-stamped 0319, taken from above. Shows us on the tundra." "Same," I said. "Someone's watching." "Not someone, something." We ate breakfast in silence. Around us, workers talked and laughed and planned their days. Normal people with normal problems. I envied them. I wanted to be normal again. I wanted to forget what we'd seen. But I couldn't. The photo on my phone proved it was real. Proved we'd been seen. At 0800, I called Garrett at NOAA, the same man who'd investigated Point Lonely. I told him about our encounter. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "You're the third report in 2 months," he said. "Point Lonely. A pilot named Grant McCarthy. Now you and Jake. What do you think it is?" "I don't know, but the reports have common elements. Lights, radio interference, lost time, physical evidence that disappears, and all of them happen on the North Slope. All of them in winter, all of them at night. What's your theory?" "Officially, atmospheric phenomena, aurora effects, equipment malfunction. Unofficially, I think there's something operating in that region. I think it's been there for a long time. And I think it's selective about who it contacts. Why us? I don't know. Maybe you were in the right place at the right time. Or the wrong place, depends on how you look at it." I asked if there would be an investigation. Garrett said he'd file a report, but didn't expect much to come of it. The evidence was too thin. The witnesses were credible, but the stories were too strange. It would be logged and filed and forgotten. "What do we do?" I asked. "Live with it, document it, and stay away from the North Slope if you can." I thanked him and hung up. Jake and I talked about leaving, about transferring to other regions, somewhere warmer, somewhere with more people, somewhere far from the tundra and the lights and the things that watched from above. But we didn't leave. Not right away. We stayed in Deadhorse for another week. We ran calls, we treated patients, we acted normal. But at night, when the aurora came out, I found myself staring at the sky, watching for columns of light, watching for shapes that moved wrong. On February 16th, 8 days after our encounter, I got a message from Marcus. Another crew had found something unusual while surveying a site northeast of Deadhorse, a black object standing upright on the snow. They'd taken photos and sent them in. I looked at the photos Marcus forwarded. My breath caught. The black suit, the same one Jake and I had found. Standing alone on the tundra, the smooth dome. The arms ending in points, the legs like cylinders, and around the base, a ring of warm snow. "Where is this?" I asked Marcus. "About 60 miles from where you reported the abandoned bombardier. Different location, but the description matches what you wrote in your report." "Who found it?" "A seismic crew. They logged it as unknown equipment, possibly military. They didn't touch it, they just took photos and moved on." "Are they sending a team to investigate?" "Maybe. It's on the list. But there's no urgency. It's not bothering anyone." I stared at the photos. The suit looked exactly the same, like it hadn't moved, like it was waiting. I asked Marcus to send me the coordinates. He did. I plotted them on a map. The location formed a rough triangle with where Jake and I had found the first suit and where Point Lonely sat. 3 points, evenly spaced, about 80 miles apart. I showed Jake. He studied the map and nodded slowly. "It's marking territory. Or building something." "What?" "I don't know, but 3 points form a perimeter, a boundary. Maybe that's what the voice meant. The boundary remains." We reported our theory to Garrett. He logged it, but didn't sound surprised. He said other researchers were noticing patterns too. Lights appearing in clusters, radio interference zones forming grids, physical evidence showing up in geometric arrangements. "It's deliberate," Garrett said. "Whatever it is, it's organized. It has a purpose. Should we be worried? I don't know. It hasn't harmed anyone yet. It's just present, watching, marking, waiting. For what? That's what we're trying to figure out." Jake and I left Dead Horse on February 20th. We took a commercial flight to Fairbanks and from there to our respective homes. He went to Seattle. I went to Maine. We stayed in touch. Weekly calls at first, then monthly. We didn't talk about the suit or the lights unless one of us brought it up. And even then, the conversations were short. What more was there to say? We'd seen it, we'd documented it, and we'd been marked. 6 months later, I got a call from a researcher at the University of Alaska, a woman named Dr. Brennan. She was compiling reports of unusual phenomena on the North Slope. She'd gotten my name from Garrett. "Ms. Turner, I'd like to interview you about your experience on February 8th. "What kind of interview?" "Just a conversation. I'm trying to understand patterns, commonalities among witnesses. I've spoken with the meteorologist from Point Lonely and the pilot Grant McCarthy. Your account fits the profile." I agreed. We talked for 2 hours. She asked detailed questions. What did the light look like? What did the suit feel like? What did the voice say? I answered as honestly as I could. She recorded everything. At the end, she asked, "Do you think you'll ever go back? To the North Slope?" Yes, I thought about that. No, I don't think so. Why not? Because something marked us. It knows we were there. And I don't want to find out what happens if we come back. Dr. Brennan was quiet for a moment. Then she said something that made my skin crawl. "Ms. Turner, have you experienced any unusual symptoms since your encounter?" "What kind of symptoms?" "Sleep disturbances, vivid dreams, a sense of being watched. Some witnesses report these things." I thought about waking at 03:20, about the photo appearing on my phone, about the nights I stood at my window and scanned the sky for lights that shouldn't be there. "Yes," I said, "all of those things. Can you describe the dreams?" I hesitated. I hadn't told anyone about the dreams. Not even Jake. "I dream about the suit. It's standing in the bowl like we found it. But in the dream it moves, it turns toward me, and when I look at the reflective dome, I see something inside. Not my reflection. Something else." "Can you describe what you see?" "No, it's too dark, too unclear, but I know it's looking at me." Dr. Brennan made notes. 7 out of 12 witnesses report similar dreams. The suit appears, it moves, and something looks out from inside, always the same pattern. What does it mean? I don't know, but I have a theory. I think the marking isn't just metaphorical. I think there's a physical component, something that connects you to whatever is operating up there. Like what? I don't know yet, but I'm planning a research expedition in September. We'll be surveying sites where encounters have been reported, including the location where you found the suit. Would you be willing to come? As a consultant? Every instinct told me to say no, to stay away from the North Slope, to let Dr. Brennan and her team investigate without me. But another part of me wanted answers, needed to understand what we'd touched, what had marked us. "Let me think about it," I said. Dr. Brennan thanked me and hung up. A week later, she sent me a draft of her paper. It was titled, "Anomalous Phenomena Along Alaska's North Slope. A Pattern Analysis of Witness Reports, 2023-2024. She cited 12 encounters, Point Lonely, Grant McCarthy's flights, our experience, others I hadn't heard about. She identified common elements: lights, radio interference, lost time, physical evidence, and the recurring phrase, "you are seen." Her conclusion was cautious. The evidence suggests a structured, non-random phenomenon operating in the region. Further investigation is warranted, but should proceed with caution given the apparent awareness demonstrated by the phenomenon. But there was a section I hadn't expected, an appendix with medical data. Dr. Brennan had interviewed witnesses and asked them to undergo voluntary health screenings. 8 had agreed. The results showed anomalies: elevated white blood cell counts, unusual brain activity patterns during sleep, and something else, something she called trace elements. The paper explained, blood samples from witnesses show trace amounts of an unidentified metallic compound. Spectroscopy analysis indicates the presence of elements not naturally occurring in human biology. The compound's origin is unknown, its function is unknown, but its presence in all tested witnesses suggests a common exposure event. I read that paragraph 3 times. Something was in our blood. Something that came from the encounter, from touching the boundary, from being marked. I called Jake. "Did you see Dr. Brennan's paper?" "Yeah, I read it this morning." "The trace elements. Did you get tested?" "No, did you?" "No, but I'm going to." I made an appointment with my doctor. I explained that I was participating in a research study and needed blood work. I didn't mention the North Slope or the suit or the lights. Just a research study, standard screening. The results came back 2 weeks later. My doctor called me into her office. She had the lab report on her desk and her face was serious. "Isla, your blood work shows some unusual findings." "What kind of findings?" "Elevated white blood cells. That could indicate an infection or immune response. But there's also something else. The lab flagged an unknown compound in your bloodstream. They ran it 3 times to confirm it's there, but they can't identify it." "Is it dangerous?" "We don't know. I'd like to refer you to a specialist, someone who works with environmental medicine. Unusual exposures." I agreed. The specialist, a doctor named Hammond, saw me a week later. He reviewed the results and asked about my work history. I told him about the Arctic, about emergency response, about exposure to cold and equipment and fuel. I didn't mention the suit. He ran additional tests, MRI, EEG, more blood work. Everything came back normal except for the compound. It was still there, still unidentified, still present in trace amounts throughout my system. "Miss Turner, I've never seen anything like this," Dr. Hammond said. "The compound isn't harmful as far as we can tell. It's just there, like it's part of your biology now. Can you remove it?" "I don't know. I'd need to understand what it is first. And right now, we don't." I left his office with more questions than answers. I called Dr. Brennan and told her about the test results. She asked if I'd be willing to participate in a more detailed study. I said yes. Over the next month, I underwent a battery of tests at the University of Alaska's research facility. Dr. Brennan and her team documented everything. The compound in my blood matched what they'd found in other witnesses. Same spectroscopic signature. Same concentration. Same mystery. "It's a marker," Dr. Brennan said during one of our sessions. "Whatever marked you on the tundra left something behind. Something physical, something we can measure. But what is it?" "We don't know yet, but I have colleagues at MIT analyzing the samples. If we can determine its composition, we might understand its purpose." In August, Dr. Brennan called with an update. "The MIT team has preliminary results. The compound contains isotopes that don't match terrestrial abundances. It's not from Earth. Or if it is, it's been altered in a way we can't replicate." I felt cold spread through my chest. "You're saying it's extraterrestrial?" "I'm saying it's not naturally occurring in Earth's environment. Where it came from, we can't say for certain. But its presence in your body, and in the bodies of other witnesses, suggests intentional introduction. Why? That's what we're trying to figure out. Is it a tracker, a biological marker, a communication device? We don't know. But it's there, and it's active. Active how? It generates a faint electromagnetic signature. We can detect it with sensitive equipment. It pulses at regular intervals, like it's transmitting. Transmitting what? We don't know. But whatever marked you is still connected to you, still monitoring, still watching. I printed the paper and put it in a folder with our written account and the photos from my phone. Evidence, proof, not enough to convince skeptics, but enough to remind myself that it was real. I took a job in southern Maine, rural ambulance service, quiet towns, small emergencies, normal work. I don't miss the Arctic. I don't miss the cold or the darkness or the endless horizons. But sometimes at night, when the sky is clear, I look up and wonder if something is looking back. Jake calls every few months. We talk about work, about life, about normal things. But there's always a moment in the conversation when we both go quiet, when we both remember. The black suit standing on warm snow, the spheres sinking into the tundra, the voice that said we were marked. In October, Jake called with urgency in his voice. "Isla, something happened. I need to tell you about it." "What's wrong?" "Last night I woke up at 3:20, exact time, like clockwork, and my phone was on. The screen was showing a photo I'd never seen before." My stomach tightened. What was in the photo? The tundra, at night. But this time it wasn't us walking. It was the suit, the black suit, standing in the bowl, except it wasn't alone. "What do you mean?" There were two suits, side by side, both with the smooth domes, both with arms ending in points, and behind them, in the darkness, I could see shapes, lots of them, like a line stretching back into the distance. "Did you save the photo?" I tried, but when I went to screenshot it, the phone shut off. When I turned it back on, the photo was gone, just like before. I told him about the compound in my blood, about Dr. Brennan's findings, about the electromagnetic signature that pulsed at regular intervals. He went quiet. "I got tested too," he said finally. "After I read Dr. Brennan's paper. Same results. The compound's in my blood, same concentration as yours. We're connected to it," I said. "Whatever it is, it's still monitoring us. Isla, I don't think we should ignore this anymore. I think we need to go back." "Back to the North Slope?" "Yes. Dr. Brennan invited me on her September expedition. I said no. But after last night, after seeing those suits multiplying, I think we need to understand what we're connected to." I thought about that. Every rational part of me said to stay away, to let the researchers handle it, to live my normal life and forget about the Arctic. But Jake was right. The connection wasn't going away. The compound was in our blood. The electromagnetic pulses continued. The photos kept appearing. We were marked, and ignoring it wouldn't change that. "All right," I said. "I'll call Dr. Brennan." Dr. Brennan's expedition was scheduled for September 15th. A team of 6. Dr. Brennan, 2 research assistants, a security consultant, Jake, and me. We'd fly to Deadhorse and take ground vehicles to the site where we'd found the first suit and conduct a systematic survey, soil samples, radiation readings, electromagnetic scans, photographic documentation. The goal was evidence, data, something concrete that could be published and verified. We arrived in Deadhorse on September 14th. The weather was cold but clear. The sun sat low on the horizon, giving us a few hours of pale daylight. We loaded the equipment and departed at 1400 the following day. The route felt familiar, too familiar. Jake drove. I navigated. Dr. Brennan sat in the back with her equipment. The security consultant, a former military man named Reeves, rode in a second vehicle with the research assistants. At 1647, we reached the coordinates where we'd found the red bombardier. The snow had melted and refrozen with the seasons, but the location was exact. We stopped and surveyed the area. No vehicle, no tracks, just tundra. "The bowl is a quarter-mile southeast," I said. We drove to the ridge and climbed it on foot. From the crest, we looked down into the bowl. My breath caught. The black suit was there, standing in the exact spot where we'd found it 8 months ago. But it wasn't alone. Just as Jake had seen in his photo, there was a second suit beside it. And behind them, barely visible in the fading light, were more. 5, 10, maybe 20. All identical. All standing in perfect formation. All facing north. Dr. Brennan pulled out her equipment. "I'm reading strong electromagnetic signatures, multiple sources, all pulsing in unison." Reeves scanned the area with binoculars. "No movement, they're just standing there." "We need to get closer," Dr. Brennan said. Jake and I exchanged a look. Closer meant descending into the bowl. It meant approaching the suits. It meant crossing the boundary again. "We stay together," Reeves said. "No one separates. If anything moves, we retreat immediately." We descended. The suits grew larger as we approached. 30 feet away, Dr. Brennan stopped and set up her equipment. She ran scans while the research assistants took photos and video. Jake and I stood with Reeves, watching the suits for any sign of movement. They didn't move. They just stood. Silent, still. The domes reflected the pale sky. The arms hung at wrong angles. The legs were too straight. And the snow beneath them was warm. I could feel it through my boots. "The compound in your blood," Dr. Brennan said, studying her scanner. "It's resonating with the electromagnetic field here. You're connected to them, physically connected." I felt it then. A low vibration in my chest. Not painful, just present. Like a tuning fork had been struck inside me and was resonating with something in the suits. "They know we're here," Jake said quietly. As if responding to his words, the domes on all the suits began to glow. Faint at first, then brighter. White light emanated from within the reflective surfaces. The glow intensified until I had to look away. "We should go," Reeves said. "Now." We backed away. The suits didn't move, but the light continued to brighten. Dr. Brennan grabbed her equipment and we climbed out of the bowl. When we reached the ridge and looked back, the suits were dark again. The light had vanished. They stood as they had before, silent, still, waiting. "Did you get data?" I asked Dr. Brennan. She nodded, her face pale. "Everything. Electromagnetic readings, spectroscopy, thermal imaging, it's all there." We returned to the vehicles and drove back to Dead Horse. No one spoke much. We were all processing what we'd seen. The multiplication of the suits, the light from the domes, the resonance between the compound in our blood and whatever stood in that bowl. That night, at exactly 03:20, both Jake and I woke simultaneously. We were in separate rooms at the crew quarters, but we both felt it at the same instant. The vibration in our chests, the pull. We met in the hallway, both of us drawn by the same compulsion. "You feel it?" Jake asked. "Yeah?" We walked outside. The aurora was bright overhead. Green and purple bands stretched across the sky. And there, on the northern horizon, we saw it. A column of white light, distant, maybe 50 miles away. Exactly where the bowl was located. The light held for 10 seconds. Then it snapped off. The aurora returned to normal. The vibration in our chests faded. They're still connected to us, Jake said. I know. We stood in the cold and watched the northern sky. Waiting for the light to return, it didn't, but we both knew it would someday. The marking wasn't temporary. It was permanent. We were part of whatever was happening on the North Slope. Part of a pattern that was growing, expanding, building toward something we couldn't yet understand. We don't talk about going back. We don't talk about what it meant. We just remember. And we carry it with us. I think about the photo on my phone. The one taken from above. The one showing us walking across the tundra at night. Someone, or something, was watching. They wanted us to know. They wanted us to understand that we'd crossed a line, that we'd entered a space that wasn't ours, and now we're marked, whatever that means, whatever comes next. I write this down because I think people should know, not as a warning, not as evidence, just as a record. If you work on the North Slope, watch for lights that don't behave like the aurora. Watch for radio calls that don't make sense. Watch for tracks that lead nowhere and objects that stand where they shouldn't. And if you find a black suit standing on the snow with a smooth reflective dome and arms that end in points, don't touch it. Don't approach it. Don't try to understand it. Just mark the location and leave. Because if you touch it, you'll cross the boundary. And once you cross, something will know. Something will watch. Something will mark you. Jake and I crossed. We touched. We were seen. And now we carry that knowledge with us. We're marked, whatever that means. We'll find out eventually. Maybe tomorrow. Maybe in 10 years. Maybe never. But we'll always know that somewhere on the tundra, under the aurora, the black suit stands. The spheres wait beneath the snow. And something watches from above, taking photos in the night, reminding us that the boundary remains. The sky is open, and we are seen.